Bruh, what kind of cursed place is this? Susan bolted upright, his heart pounding out his chest. He was lying on cold, soggy dirt that practically reeked of salt water. As he scanned his surroundings, his eyes went completely wide with shock. He was stuck on a tiny floating island barely 30 feet across. And right past the edge, nothing but a massive, swirling ocean of grayish-white clouds. It was an endless abyss. At the center of the island, a battered, drafty wooden shack stood all by itself. Aside from that, the only thing nearby was a cheap, broken bamboo fishing rod. Suddenly, a blinding migraine ripped through his skull as a massive data dump of information forced its way straight into his brain. Turns out, 7 billion people across Earth had just been isekai'd together into this wild survival realm called the Cloud Ocean. Floating islands. And talk about fair play. Everyone started with the exact same trash setup. A tiny plot of land, a rundown shack, and one sketchy fishing rod. If they wanted to survive, they had no choice but to use that rod to literally fish for loot boxes in the clouds. You gotta be kidding me. Fishing for supplies in the clouds. Suzanne grabbed the rod. The bamboo handle was covered in splinters and cracks. The line was spun from some weird, sketchy plant fibers, and the hook was literally just a bent piece of wire. Right then, a glowing holographic screen popped up in the bottom right corner of his vision. With just a thought, the UI expanded, revealing a few options. Chat channel, trading post, and personal profile. Curious, he tapped chat channel, which broke down into world, national, regional, and local channels. The first 3 were completely grayed out and locked, leaving only the local channel active. The second he opened it, messages were flying by at absolute hyperspeed. The counter in the corner showed the current player count. 10,000 out of 10,000 alive. Is anyone there? Someone please save me. Bro, I have crippling vertigo. It's just an endless drop below us. I'm losing my mind here. What is happening? I was literally just in a Zoom meeting a second ago. How'd I end up on this trash tier island? I'm starving. Does anyone have food? I'll Venmo you 100 grand for a slice of bread. Screw that, 1 million. Just feed me, and I'll wire the cash instantly. Wake up, you clown. Money is completely worthless here. Did you even read the rules? We have to fish for survival items. Bro, I've been fishing for 30 minutes, and all I reeled up was a rotten shoe. Same, I pulled a total blank. There's nothing in these clouds. Are we seriously just gonna starve to death? Suzanne immediately shut down the chat. Every player was capped at just 10 messages a day, meaning he needed to save his words for an actual emergency. Right on cue, his stomach growled fiercely. A brutal reminder that panicking wasn't going to save him. He had to start fishing right this second, or he wouldn't even survive the day. Creeping up to the island's edge, he leaned over to stare into the abyss. Below him, a thick sea of gray clouds churned heavily, with eerie, massive shadows darting deep within mist. With a deep breath, Susie cast his makeshift bamboo rod. The crude iron hook was baited, with whatever random junk he could scrape up near his hut, plunging straight into the endless white expanse. Minutes dragged into hours as the blistering sun beat down, turning this shadeless rock into an absolute furnace. Beads of sweat rolled down his forehead, evaporating the exact second they hit the bone-dry dirt. Susie licked his cracked, bleeding lips, white-knuckling the rod so hard his fingers lost all color. 3 painful hours passed, and his float didn't even twitch once. Cruel hunger and thirst tore at his insides, making his vision blur and spin. Meanwhile, the regional chat channel was exploding with panic. Out of a staggering 10,000 players, barely a dozen had managed to catch anything at all. It was mostly just useless wooden rags. A few unluckily reeled in pockets of toxic cloud mist, leaving them poisoned and clinging to life. Let's go. I just fished up a fresh bottle of mineral water. A flex message suddenly flashed across the chat, sent by a guy named Wong Tong. Whoa, total VIP. Bro, you're a god. Please let me get a sip. My throat is literally on fire, brother Wong. I'm a hot streamer. If you give me a drink, I'm all yours. But Wong Tong only replied with pure arrogance. Keep dreaming. I barely have enough for myself. But I might trade a tiny sip if you've got lumber. 10 wooden planks per sip. First come, first served. Susie watched the desperate drama unfold in the chat with utter cold detachment. 10 planks for a single sip of water? That was straight-up highway robbery. But trapped in this living nightmare, people would willingly give up everything just to survive. Right at that moment, the bamboo rod in his grip violently slammed downward. An insanely powerful force erupted from the depths of the cloud sea, nearly dragging Susie right off the edge of his floating island. Finally a bite. He slammed his feet into a rock-solid horse stance, throwing his entire body weight backward. Thick veins bulged violently in his forearms as he reeled back with every ounce of his strength. The fishing line stretched dangerously taut, screaming under the tension. The clouds thrashed wildly as whatever monstrous beast he'd hooked fought back, unleashing terrifying, raw power. "Get up here," gritting his teeth until they nearly shattered. Suzy gave one final, desperate heave upward. With a massive explosion of mist, the cloud layer ruptured, and a faintly glowing object sailed high through the air, crashing heavily onto the island's dusty ground. Gasping for air, Suzy scrambled over to lock his eyes onto it. It was a crisp, clear plastic bottle, filled to the brim with pure liquid. Loot acquired, standard mineral water, 500 milliliters. But before he could even celebrate his massive win, a cold, robotic system voice echoed directly inside his head. Ding! Survival supplies detected. The tenfold critical hit system has successfully bound to the host. Every single item the host fishes up will now can trigger a massive tenfold critical multiplier. Ding! Congratulations, host. You have acquired 10 bottles of mineral water, 500 milliliters each, multiplied by 10. Suzy completely froze on the spot, his eyes glued to the glowing virtual panel, floating right in front of him. A system? The legendary golden finger from web novels was actually real. Pure, unadulterated hype flooded his chest. He clenched his fist so hard that his fingernails dug deep into his palm, using the sharp sting of pain to prove this wasn't some crazy hallucination. Right then, the lone bottle on the ground blurred for a split second and suddenly duplicated into 10 identical bottles, lined up in perfect rows across the dirt. Without wasting time, Suzy twisted a cap open and chugged it straight down. The ice-cold liquid rushed down his throat, instantly crushing his brutal thirst. He downed half the bottle in one breath, then tightly sealed the rest to save for later. With 10 full bottles of water, he hadn't just solved his immediate survival crisis. He now had the ultimate leverage to dominate. In this new world, the trading market only allows 3 transactions a day. I've got to maximize my returns. Opening up the market interface, Suzy immediately listed 2 bottles of water and set his terms. Seller, Suzy. Listed item, standard mineral water, 500 milliliters, require materials. Wood x20 or thatch x30. Or food. DM for quality check. Stock 2. The second that listing went live, the regional chat channel absolutely lost it. Holy hell, who is this absolute madman? Bro is casually putting up 2 entire bottles of water. Wong Tong was demanding 10 wooden planks for a single sip earlier. And this absolute legend only wants 20 for a whole bottle. What a literal saint. Big shot, Suzy. I've got 30 bundles of thatch ready. I already sent the offer. Please hit accept. Completely ignoring the chaotic chat, Suzy instantly locked into trades. A flash of light instantly consumed the 2 water bottles, and 40 pristine wooden planks, along with 60 bundles of thatch, materialized right on the ground, staring down at the massive pile of supplies that had literally spawned out of thin air. Suzy flashed a highly satisfied grin. Next, he tapped the construction tab. In the bottom right corner of his HUD, the icon for his broken-down shelter began to glow, showing it was finally ready for an upgrade. Ramshackle hut. Extremely drafty. Offers bare minimum shelter. Upgrade cost. Wood x20, thatch x30. Upgrade? Suzy mentally triggered the command, confirming the build without a single second of hesitation. On his mark, 20 planks and 30 bundles of thatch instantly dissolved into a blinding white light, completely enveloping the dilapidated old shack. The radiant glow swirled for a few seconds, accompanied by the heavy mechanical sound of wood shifting and locking together before finally fading away. Standing before Suzy now was a total game-changer. Sturdy wooden hut, completely weatherproofed against wind and rain. It shields him from the brutal weather and gives a real sense of security, complete with a basic wooden bed. Suzanne pushes open the heavy timber door and steps inside. Instantly, the howling, salty sea wind that used to rip through the hut is completely shut out. The indoor air is way cooler than the heat outside. In the corner sits a simple wooden bed, giving off a faint, fresh timber scent. Sure, there's no soft mattress, but it's a million times better than sleeping on hard. Board dirt. Okay, now this actually feels like a legit shelter. Suzanne collapses onto the bed and lets out a massive sigh of relief. But he knows resting isn't an option yet. His stomach lets out a violent growl, a loud reminder that while his water crisis is solved, He's still completely out of food. A man can't survive on vibes alone. Without food, he won't last more than a few days. In this absolute hellhole, Suzanne heads back outside, grabs his battered bamboo rod once again, and strides over to the island's edge. Below him, the sea of clouds is a churning abyss of murky gray, looking like a monster ready to swallow him whole. Taking a deep breath, he casts his wire hook, baited with wood shavings, right back into the mist. Time slowly ticks away. As the sun dips west, the islet starts to cool down, but starvation is making Suzanne dizzy and lightheaded. 30 grueling minutes pass, and the makeshift float hasn't triggered a single ripple. Just as Suzanne prepares to reel in his line and check the bait, convinced he's struck out, a sudden tremor jolts up the rod. The basic float, bobbing on the cloud surface, suddenly gets yanked straight down, whipping up a tiny, swirling vortex in the mist. I've got a bite. Suzanne's eyes lock in. He grips the rod tight and hauls upward with all his might. Surprisingly, this catch feels way lighter than the water bottles. There's no crazy, struggling, threatening to pull him over the edge. With barely any effort, he yanks his prize straight out of the cloud sea. Thud! A damp, dark yellow oil paper package lands heavily on the dirt. Suzanne rushes over and tears the wrapping open. Inside is a half-pound loaf of rock-hard black bread, paired with a strip of dried mystery meat that smells incredibly savory and salty. Loot acquired. Low-grade black bread X1. Dried jerky X1. But before Suzanne can even reach for the food, that cold, mechanical voice echoes in his head again. Right on cue. Ding. Supplies detected. Tenfold. Critical hit system activated. Congratulations, host. You have acquired low-grade black bread X10 and dried jerky X10. The oil paper package blurs for a split second, and suddenly, 10 loaves of black bread and 10 strips of jerky are neatly lined up right at his feet. Holy crap, this is insane. Suzanne can't even filter himself. Pure adrenaline and joy surging through his chest. He snatches a strip of jerky and bites down, tearing into it and chewing like a madman. The meat was rock hard, absolutely caked in smoke and salt. But to his starving self, this dry ration tasted better than premium A5 Wagyu from a 3-star Michelin restaurant. He forcefully chewed it down, washed it back with his final half bottle of lukewarm water, and literally crammed half the bread loaf down his throat. Instantly, his hollow stomach finally felt full, and his depleted stamina bar began skyrocketing as pure, raw energy surged back into his veins. But just as Suzette was savoring this hard-earned feast, the district chat icon in the corner of his vision began flashing like crazy, accompanied by shrill, frantic system alerts. Frowning, he immediately popped the channel open. Right there, pinned to the absolute top, was a voice note, sent by a user named Lichong. His profile picture showed a heavy-set guy in thick, black-rimmed glasses. Curiously, Suzette tapped the audio file. Help! Someone please help me. There's a monster. There's a literal monster under the clouds. Lichong's voice was shaking with absolute, pure terror, warped by ragged gasps and the howling wind, sounding like his throat was about to rip from screaming. I was just fishing and, out of nowhere, this tentacle, covered in pitch-black scales, shot straight out of the mist. It was freaking massive. It ripped the rod right out of my hand with insane, monstrous strength. It almost dragged me down into the abyss with it. What kind of cursed, hellish place is this? I just want to go home, Sob. Sobi. Suddenly, the audio cut off completely, leaving nothing but a dead static buzz. The global chat, which was just filled with players begging for a scrap of food or water, went completely, deathly silent. But seconds later, the entire chat absolutely exploded. Whoa, a tentacle monster? Bro, do not play with me like that. I'm easily freaked out. Is this actually real? Wait, there are actual monsters living in the cloud sea. How the hell are we supposed to survive this? This whole world is a death trap. We're completely doomed. Oh my god, I saw them too. Massive, dark shadows gliding beneath the clouds earlier. I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. But those are actual monsters. Mom, I want to go home. I don't want to fish anymore. Just like that, pure panic spread through the channel like a plague, with everyone desperately venting their unbridled terror. Suzette stared out at the endlessly churning cloud sea, his eyebrows knitting close together. He instantly recalled those eerie, shadowy shapes darting deep in the mist that he had briefly glimpsed during his very first cast. This seemingly peaceful, majestic sea of clouds was actually nothing more than a giant, teeming monsterdin. Still, analyzing the Schonstarifin Urao. As long as they stayed safely on their floating islets, They would remain out of harm's way, basically unless you got physically dragged over the edge. These tiny islands were their only true sanctuary. In this bizarre world, if I want to survive, I need to get stronger fast. His eyes turned ice cold and razor sharp. He carefully hauled the rest of his food supplies back inside the wooden hut for safekeeping, and then gripped his trusty fishing rod once more, ready to face the shadow of the monsters, weighed heavily on the heart of every single survivor. The world chat was absolutely blowing up with people crying and straight up losing their minds. Terrified, most players had already ditched their fishing rods, huddling inside their drafty little shacks, and too scared to even glance at the sea of clouds. But hunger and dehydration were way deadlier than any monster. Suzanne knew the harsh truth. If you stop fishing, you might as well just sign your own death warrant. Plus, with his insane 10x critical hit system, giving him a limitless stockpile of food and water, he could easily afford to grind nonstop, leaving everyone else completely in the dust. Now that the competition was too terrified to cast a line, this was his golden ticket to power level, with absolutely zero interference. He immediately yeeted the iron hook back into the misty abyss. This time, the grueling wait felt longer than ever before, as the sun dipped way below the horizon. It painted the cloud sea in an eerie, blood-red glow, making the whole vibe feel way more sinister and lethal. Suzanne kept his hands steady on the rod, his eyes hyper-focused on the tiny float, bobbing on top of the mist. 1 hour dragged by. Then 2. Total darkness locked the world down, leaving his shaky hut as the only faint speck of light on the island. Then, out of nowhere, the float violently tanked downward at breakneck speed. A massive catch was on the line. Suzanne dug his heels in, arched his back, and yanked backward with every ounce of strength he had. This insane weight absolutely dwarfed everything he'd reeled in before. The fishing line shrieked with a high-pitched, strained hum, right on the absolute brink of snapping. A monstrous counterforce was pulling from the deep dark beneath the clouds, viciously ripping against his grip. Suzanne gritted his teeth, veins literally popping out across his forehead. Get up here. He took a hard step back, throwing his entire body weight into a massive upward jerk. Splash! A deafening explosion of water shattered the silence, as a heavy object soared cleanly through the air and slammed hard onto the dirt floor. Breathing heavily, Suzanne squinted through the dim shadows to finally inspect his prize. It was an ancient, weathered wooden treasure chest. Its surface was caked in thick moss and deep claw marks, practically oozing a mysterious, ancient aura. A treasure chest. Suzanne's eyes instantly lit up. He rushed over and aggressively popped the lid open, but there was zero gold or flashy jewels inside. Just a single, yellowed piece of sheepskin parchment, resting quietly at the very bottom. He scooped up the parchment. Acquired. Blueprint. Basic Water Purifier X1. Basic Water Purifier Blueprint. Unlocks the ability to craft a basic water purifier once learned. Required crafting materials: lumber X20, stone X10, cloud filter, sand X5. A water purifier? Suzanne's heart began to hammer like crazy, his breathing turning incredibly rapid. In these brutal, early survival days, clean water was worth way more than gold. Whoever locked down a steady water supply would hold absolute control over everyone else. Ding! Supplies detected. Tenfold. Critical hit system has been activated. Congratulations. The host has acquired Blueprint Dash. Basic Water Purifier X10. A blinding flash of light suddenly engulfed the parchment, cloning that single, ordinary sheet into a massive stack of blueprints. Bro, I just hit the ultimate jackpot. Pure excitement washed over Susie's face. Without wasting a second, he crushed one of the blueprints between his palms, and instantly, the entire recipe to build a water purifier was hardwired straight into his brain. But there was a massive catch. He only had basic lumber on him. No stones and definitely no rare cloud filter sand. It was time to make moves and cash out big at the trading post. Susie fired up the global market without hesitation, listing 2 of his duplicate blueprints for trade. Seller: Susie. Item: blueprint for a basic water purifier, quantity 1. Asking price: 10 units of cloud filter sand, or 1 floating island foundation stone, or 50 normal stones. DM to negotiate. Stock 2. The exact microsecond the listing went live, the completely dead regional chat channel absolutely exploded, like a literal depth charge detonating underwater. Whoa, whoa, whoa. What am I even looking at right now? A real blueprint. Did someone seriously just fish up a crafting blueprint? And it's for a basic water purifier? Bro, That literally means infinite drinking water forever. You are an absolute legend. Big shot. Big shot, Susie, look at me. I bought water from you yesterday, man. Please cut me a solid deal. I only have 20 stones right now, and I am straight up dying of thirst. Wait, what even is a foundation stone? Yo, I actually reeled in a weird glowing rock, called a floating island foundation stone earlier. Is this what you want? I'll trade it right now. But just as the desperate crowd was ready to sell their souls, to get their hands on those blueprints, a toxic, hateful voice suddenly cut through the hype. It was Wong Tong. Don't fall for Susie scam, you guys. Wong Tong frantically spammed the global chat, doing everything he could to manufacture doubt. Use your brains for a second. The rest of us can barely scrape together enough food to survive. So how could he magically pull such a high-tier item out of the water? This is 100% a fraudulent setup. Even if the blueprint turns out to be real, just take a look at the ridiculous materials it needs. What in the world is cloud sea filter sand? Has literally anyone here ever seen that before? A recipe you can actually craft is nothing more than a piece of garbage waste paper. He's just trying to get something for nothing, looking to swindle everyone out of the basic supplies that you all worked your asses off to fish up. Don't fall into his trap. Keep a tight grip on your resources if you want to stay alive. Wong Tong's aggressive reality check instantly poured ice water over the heads of several hyped-up players in the chat room. Honestly, Brother Wong makes a really solid point. Yeah, I've literally never even heard of that material. Where exactly are we supposed to look for it anyway? What's the point of trading for a blueprint if we can't actually build anything with it? We'd honestly be way better off saving our supplies, just to swap them for a single sip of clean water later. Yo, Susie, stop hiding and explain yourself. Can this blueprint actually produce anything real? Or are you just going to stay completely silent? Susie watched Wong Tong throwing a pathetic, clownish tantrum all over the global chat, and just scoffed with pure disdain. He didn't even bother typing a reply. When you possess absolute, overwhelming power, wasting your breath on explanations is completely useless. He was about to completely shut these fools up, with nothing but cold, hard facts. Faced with Wong Tong's desperate slander, and the mindless doubts flooding the chat, Susie remained completely unfazed. Honestly, he just wanted to laugh at this bunch of idiots. Hard-stuck lowlives destined to stay at the bottom forever. Without wasting another second, Susie minimized the chat interface entirely. Right then, a crisp system notification chimed from the trading hub. Even though Wong Tong was trying his best to stir up drama, the sharp, elite players instantly recognized the insane value of his blueprint. Not to mention, some incredibly lucky survivors had actually managed to fish up rare materials. Ding! Trade successful. Exchanged. 1x basic water purifier blueprint. Received. 10x cloud sea filter sand. 20x stone. Ding! Trade successful. Exchanged. 1x basic water purifier blueprint. Received. 1x sky island foundation stone. 30x stone. Glancing at his rapidly growing stockpile of resources, a sharp, calculating glint flashed across Susie's eyes. Perfect. Every single material is accounted for. He immediately pulled up his crafting menu and slammed the newly unlocked basic water purifier option. Craft. Instantly, the timber, stones, and those 10 glowing chunks of cloud sea filter sand levitated into the air, swirling and fusing together, accompanied by a heavy, mechanical roar. A bizarre, complex contraption standing at half a man's height and masterfully constructed from raw timber and stone, solidified and landed right next to his wooden cabin. Basic water purifier converts any liquid or toxic cloud mist into pure, drinkable water. Output efficiency, 1,000 milliliters per hour. Incredible. Susie proudly patted the rugged, solid frame of the machine. He vividly recalled the other players whining in chat about the deadly, toxic mist they kept fishing up. To everyone else, that vile mist was a lethal hazard to avoid at all costs. But to him, it was an infinite cheat code for raw materials. Without missing a beat, Susie put a few surplus wooden planks up on the trading market, easily swapping them for 3 tightly sealed glass jars, each packed to the brim with churning, toxic mist. Pop! He uncapped the jars and poured the swirling, dark green, poisonous fog straight into the purifier's intake valve, before firmly pressing the ignition switch. Hum! A low, powerful vibration reverberated from the machine, as the filter sand inside began to radiate a soft, neon blue glow. Roughly 10 minutes later, a faint, rhythmic dripping echoed from the drainage spout at the very bottom of the device. A crystal clear, Perfectly translucent droplet of water splashed into the plastic bottle he had set up earlier. Susie's eyes instantly locked in, his gaze absolutely glued to the nozzle. Drip, drip. The dripping rapidly accelerated, soon transforming into a steady, clean stream. In under 30 minutes, the entire bottle was topped off. Susie grabbed the container, twisted the cap open, and took a careful sniff. Remarkably, there wasn't a single trace of foul odor left. Nothing but the faint, sweet aroma of liquid gold. System alert, 200 milliliters of pure water acquired. Without wasting a single second, Susie immediately slapped this fresh bottle of pure water right onto the global trade market. Listing, seller Susie is trading 200 milliliters of pure water. Payment required, 5 metal ingots, 1 Sky Island Foundation stone, or rare blueprints. Slide into my DMs if you've got them. Note, legit blueprint craft. 100% certified pure. Constantly buying high-tier materials in bulk. Broke players and toxic trolls, don't even bother. The exact millisecond that trade went live, the entire regional chat went completely ghost. Just pure, dead silence for 10 straight seconds. And then, the chat absolutely exploded into pure chaos. Bro, no freaking way, pure water? Wait, is this real life, or am I hallucinating right now? Holy crap, the blueprint actually works. Susie is a literal god walking among us. All hail the goat. Hey, Wong Tong, you absolute clown. Almost bought into your trash talking, and missed out on buying the most OP blueprint ever. Screw you and your entire family tree, man. Yo, where'd that idiot Wong Tong go? Wong Tong, show your face, you coward. Didn't you promise us that blueprint was just useless trash? Didn't you swear he couldn't build a single thing with it? How's that massive L taste right now, punk? Meanwhile, Wong Tong, who was actively leading the hate train, just a few minutes ago, suddenly went completely radio silent, too terrified to type even a single letter. At the same time, players holding on to rare loot instantly went into a manic, desperate frenzy to buy. Big boss, how about the metal ingots you need? I salvaged them from an iron crate I fished up yesterday. Please, water god Suzuki, bless me with a trade. I actually have a Sky Island Foundation stone. I'm sending the offer over right this second. Please hit accept, boss. I'm begging you. I've got a high-grade fishing line blueprint here. How much water can that get me? Check your DMs right now. I just shot you a message. Watching the endless, blinding avalanche of private messages and incoming trade spam flooding his notifications, Suzuki just smirked. Turns out, running a total monopoly is the ultimate cheat code for getting rich. Capitalizing on the nonstop flow of pure water from his purifier, Suzuki absolutely hoarded a mountain of high-tier resources. Over the next few hours, he aggressively bought out every single metal ingot, piece of timber, and block of stone available. But best of all, he managed to snag 10 faintly glowing Sky Island Foundation stones. With these bad boys secured, he could finally kickstart his massive Mega Island expansion project. This was the legendary Sky Island Foundation Stone, a miraculous, game-changing item used to expand your territory into the heavens. As deep nights set in, freezing winds began to howl violently across the sea of clouds. Susie walked right up to the edge of his tiny, 10-square-meter floating island, staring straight down into the swirling, pitch-black abyss below. He casually tossed a glowing, cobalt blue stone from hand to hand. 10 square meters is way too cramped. I can barely even move around out here. Time for a massive upgrade. Susie's eyes locked in as he pulled up his main construction menu and slammed the button for island expansion. Suddenly, a crisp system notification rang out. Detected 10 X Sky Island Foundation stones in inventory. Consume all items to expand current territory? Yes or no? Yes. The word had barely left his lips when the 10 stones in his hand suddenly exploded into 10 blinding streaks of neon blue light. They slammed violently into the dirt right beneath his feet. Boom! The entire Sky Island began to shake violently, rattling as if hit by a massive magnitude 10 earthquake. Suzaku immediately dropped into a low stance to keep his balance, looking over at the island's edges. The soil was stretching and multiplying outward like a living organism. The once cramped space was visibly ballooning right before his eyes, the landmass swelling larger with every single churn of the earth. It took a full, agonizing minute for the thunderous rumbling to finally die down. As Susie scanned his new surroundings, a look of pure shock plastered across his face. His tiny, pathetic 10-square-meter island had just expanded into a massive 20 square meters. Its total size had literally doubled in an instant. Let's go. Susie couldn't help but roar in excitement. See, in a brutal world like this, where one wrong step meant plummeting straight into the bottomless abyss, having solid, stable ground beneath your feet was the absolute ultimate form of security. The more real estate he controlled, the more epic plays he could pull off. He immediately sat down to blueprint how to maximize this freshly spawned 10 square meters. Once he finished mapping out the master plan, Suzanne felt a massive surge of refreshing mental clarity. Even though it was now the dead of night, he didn't feel a single trace of sleepiness. He locked the wooden cabin and the water purifier right at the center, marking it as his core base of operations. He decided to leave the empty plot on the left completely open for future farmland. The moment he managed to fish up some seeds, he could start cultivating fresh vegetables and high-yield crops. Meanwhile, the long stretch along the right edge will be strictly dedicated to his fishing setup and heavy storage. Thanks to his overpowered 10x critical hit system, working in tandem with the top-tier water purifier, he had officially broken free from the constant dread of starvation and dehydration. But he couldn't stop now. Right now, his grind set was entirely focused on leveling up his strength, an absolute survival in this merciless environment. Susie walked back over to his newly designated fishing zone and aggressively cast his line into the void once more. By now, the endless sea of clouds had grown far more turbulent. As darkness fully set in, the pale gray mist morphed into an ominous, pitch-black void, looking less like clouds and more like a swarm of vengeful spirits writhing and roaring in the dark. This time, Suzanne had to wait for what felt like an eternity. It was the absolute freezing dead of night, and the icy wind was causing him to shiver uncontrollably before his fishing float finally gave a sudden twitch. Strangely, there was no violent thrashing from below, just a subtle, steady downward tug. Suzanne reeled the line back in with total, practiced ease and hauled his mysterious catch onto the dirt. Illuminated by the faint, warm glow bleeding from his cabin door, he could finally make out what he had just pulled up. It was a vintage glass drift bottle, glowing with a soft, eerie luminescence. Its opening tightly sealed off with an old cork stopper. A drift bottle? Who in their right mind would leave something like this floating out in the middle of a literal cloud sea? Driven by sheer curiosity, Suzanne snatched up the bottle and popped the cork right off. To his surprise, there was no emergency food ration or crafting blueprint inside. Instead, there was only a tightly rolled sheepskin scroll. Bracing himself, Suzanne carefully unrolled the ancient parchment, and his eyes instantly went wide. Scrawled across the parchment was a dark, crimson liquid that looked exactly like dried blood. The handwriting was a chaotic, frantic mess, practically dripping with pure panic and utter despair. Whoever finds this, you need to listen closely. I don't care who you are. Do not drop your line past 30 meters into the cloud sea during your first month. Seriously, never do it. That place is a straight-up abyss, a living hell. But if you can survive for 30 days, the system will finally grant you an upgraded fishing rod. Only the clouds 100 meters down. Hold the actual meta-tier loot, and your only ticket out of here. And whatever you do, watch out for the cloud tide. In 7 days, they're going to rise. Every single one of them will rise. The message abruptly cut off, right there, ending in a massive, horrific bloodstain, as if the rider had been brutally dragged away by something. In their final moments, the clouds sea tide. In just 7 days, they're going to swarm the islands? Suze whipped around, locking his eyes onto the swirling, black mist churning at the edge of his island. Deep inside that pitch-black void, it felt like a million sinister, unblinking eyes were locked, right onto his tiny sky island. Susein felt sharply, staring down at the blood-soaked warning on the scroll. As goosebumps erupted all over his skin, the twisted, frantic handwriting practically radiated a suffocating aura of doom. He flipped the scroll over and over, that chilling 7-day deadline echoing nonstop in his mind. This wasn't some sick joke. In this insane sky, island world, anyone dumb enough to ignore the system's rules, or the final words of the players who came before them, was guaranteed to suffer one ultimate fate, death. Suze forced himself to take a breath and lock it in. He looked down at his basic, low-tier bamboo fishing rod. The line maxed out at exactly 30 meters. A hidden training wheels safety feature for new players, hard-coded by the system itself. If he could just survive this first month, his gear would auto-upgrade, unlocking high-tier, god-level resource pools, 100 meters deep. But before any of that, he had to outlive this terrifying cloud sea tide. In just 7 days, as Suze's mind raced through survival strategies, the regional chat icon, in the bottom right corner of his HUD, started flashing like crazy. He clicked it, spotting a pinned 1-minute voice note. Blowing up at the top. The center was a guy named Zhao Gang. His profile picture showed a massive, aggressive-looking meathead scowling at the camera. Suze tapped play, and the audio blared out. Bro, I'm straight up starving to death here. I've been grinding all day and pulled up nothing but literal garbage. Not a single piece of food, but I just realized I can actually DIY my fishing line to make it longer. I literally shredded my own clothes, braided the fabric into a rope, and tied it to the main line. I'm casting deep into the abyss, boys. High risk, high reward. There's no way this trash loot is all the game has to offer. Suddenly, the sharp, violent snap of a breaking fishing line shattered the audio, instantly followed by the heavy, terrifying crunch of the island's edge, completely collapsing. Oh shit, what the hell is that? It's way too strong. Help me, my arm is tangled in the... Yo, something's dragging me down. Help. Someone save me. No, stop. There are teeth down here. Massive jaws. Please help me. Splash. A sickening thud echoed, and the audio went dead. The entire regional chat went dead silent. A whole minute passed before someone finally typed out a trembling message. Where's Xiao Gang? Why is his profile grayed out? He's dead. No doubt about it. Bro, did you not hear those screams? There are straight-up man-eating monsters lurking right beneath this sea of clouds. He was insane. Who told him to drop his line that deep? That's literally asking to get killed. Man, I was starving too. I was just about to copy him and tie more rope together. This scared me so bad I chopped my line immediately. This place is a literal nightmare. What kind of world did we get thrown into? Meanwhile, Suzai watched the absolute panic farming the chat. With cold detachment, Zhao Gang's horrific death had just proven the drift bottle's warning with bloody reality. Anything below 30 meters was a strict no-go death zone. But worse, in 7 days, the monsters lurking in the abyss would swarm onto the Sky Islands. When a tide hits, I need fortifications. Now, alarm bells instantly started blaring in Suzai's head. His 20-square-meter island was completely out in the open. Zero defenses. If those monsters breached the shore, he'd be cornered with nowhere to run. Sure, his wooden cabin was solid, but there was no telling if it could hold off an onslaught of unknown beasts. To survive, he had to hoard a massive amount of basic materials and build a literal fortress. Suzai immediately opened up the trading market. His water purifier was printing pure water nonstop. His ultimate cheat code. Without wasting a second, he listed 3 full bottles of freshly purified water, clocking in at 1,500 milliliters. Seller, Susai. Listing, 3x 500 milliliters. Pure water. Requested items. 100 wood, or 100 stone, or 100 soil, or any defensive blueprints. DM for details. Note, unlimited water supply. I will trade for any resources I need, only accepting building materials and defensive blueprints. Don't waste my time with trash. The exact millisecond this went live, the regional chat absolutely exploded again. Holy crap, Big Boss Suzai's back. Where is he getting all this water? Did this guy find an infinite spring or something? Thank God. I'm literally dying of thirst here. I've got 50 stone and 50 soil. That's enough for 1 bottle, right, boss? Please take my trade, boss. Can I trade a fine-grade bed blueprint for a sip? I don't even need the whole bottle, just a little drop. As survivors scrambled to throw their offers at him, the ever-annoying Wang Tong popped back into the chat. Don't buy his water, guys. He's straight up profiling off our suffering. Wang Tong began relentlessly spamming the channel. 800 wood for just 1 bottle of water. Outrageous. Dude is literally robbing us blind. Every single scrap of loot we spent all day fishing up is being hoarded by this one guy. We need to band together, guys. Starve before you give this clown a single resource. Once his water sits there unsold, he'll crash the prices. Boycott this bloodsucker. His toxic rant actually managed to sway a few gullible sheep. He's right. These prices are straight-up extortion. Let's collective boycott this guy. Jo, Susai, you're being incredibly selfish right now. We're all refugees from Blue Star here. You should be handing out that water for free, so we can all survive this together. Reading this pathetic attempt at moral blackmail, Susie almost burst out laughing. These absolute fools still hadn't grasped the brutal reality of their new world, preaching ethics and unity in a cutthroat survival realm, where human life is completely worthless, utterly ridiculous. He couldn't even be bothered to type a comeback, choosing to completely ghost the chat instead. And, just as expected, Wang Tong's so-called alliance shattered instantly. The second the primal urge to survive kicked in, Not even 30 seconds passed before that sweet, crisp trading chime rang out again. Ding. Trade successful. Exchanged. 500 milliliters pure water. Received. 100 timber. Ding. Trade successful. Exchanged. 500 milliliters pure water. Received. 100 stone. Ding. Trade successful. Exchanged. 500 milliliters pure water. Received. 100 dirt. Boom. All 3 bottles vanished in the blink of an eye. The keyboard warriors who were just screaming for a boycott were left staring in utter shock. Yo, who bought that? We agreed to stand together. You're all a bunch of backstabbers. Wong Tong flew into a psychotic rage, spamming toxic insults all over the chat. Wake up, bro. My throat is bone dry right now. I'm gonna literally die without water. If you're so high and mighty, then you go dehydrate, you absolute idiot. One of the quick finger buyers immediately fired back. Exactly. Wong Tong, you're just broke and can't afford it. So you try to trick us into passing up the trade. And almost got me killed. Jo, Bosusai. Got any more water? I totally missed out on that drop. I've got plenty of materials ready to trade. Just like that, Wong Tong became the absolute laughingstock of the entire global server. Clowned on and bombarded with vicious roasts. He completely vanished from the chat, never daring to type again. Suzy smirked, watching a massive wave of 300 basic materials flood directly into his inventory. This right here was the power of a monopoly. As long as he held the exclusive rights to the water purifier, he could infinitely milk resources from every single survivor in the zone. The raw materials were stacking up nicely, but he still hadn't secured any defensive blueprints. Completely unbothered, Suzy calmly picked up his fishing rod, baited the hook, and cast his line deep into the churning sea of clouds. As the night grew pitch black, unearthly, spine-chilling roars began echoing from the dense mist, as if terrifying, monstrous entities were stirring. Awake in the shadows, about an hour later, suddenly, the bamboo rod in his hands violently yanked downward. Feeling the insane weight, Suzy's eyes locked in. He anchored his feet deep into the dirt, white-knuckling the grip and throwing his entire body back. The sheer resistance was mind-blowing, way heavier than any legendary treasure chest he'd reeled in before. The fishing line stretched to its absolute limit, screaming and creaking under the massive strain. Get up here. Suzy gritted his teeth, his biceps flexing to the point of bursting, as he put every single ounce of his power into the pull. Boom! A massive splash erupted straight through the clouds, and a massive, pitch-black object arced through the sky, crashing heavily right onto the floating island. With a loud, metallic thud, trying to catch his breath, Suzy approached the mysterious catch to see what he got. Illuminated by the faint glow of his wooden cabin, he finally saw what was lying on the ground. It was a heavy, square iron crate. The entire surface was completely caked in a nasty, reddish-brown rust, with a massive brass padlock sealing the latch tight. But here's the creepiest part. A pungent, metallic stench of fresh blood was slowly oozing out of the crate's seams, making it seem like something was just butchered inside. Suzy stared intensely at the blood-soaked iron box, his eyebrows knitting together in deep suspicion. In this bizarre, unpredictable void world, anything out of the ordinary could be a lethal trap. He wasn't stupid enough to just reach out and touch it. Instead, he reached into his inventory and pulled out a massive stone he had just traded for, cautiously creeping toward the ominous crate. No matter what kind of nightmare is waiting inside, I'm smashing it to pieces first. A cold, ruthless gleam flashed across his eyes. He raised the heavy rock, which easily weighed over 10 pounds, and brought it down hard, smashing the brass padlock. Clang! A deafening metal-on-metal ring echoed out, sending brilliant sparks flying everywhere. The ancient lock was already completely degraded by rust, and that single, brutal impact instantly crushed it out of shape. Without wasting a single second, Suzy slammed it 3 or 4 more times, until the lock shattered completely and fell away. Using the tip of his boot, he carefully nudged the lid open, instantly jumping back 2 paces into a defensive stance, ready to counter any jump scare or ambush. But to his surprise, no monster leaped out, and there were no gory body parts like he expected. Instead, that pungent, bloody reek was just coming from shredded rag, lining the bottom of the container. And sitting right on top of that blood-soaked cloth were 2 distinct loot items. A sleek, pitch-black military tactical dagger looking absolutely lethal, and a few small paper parcels wrapped tightly in waterproof oilskin. Seeing this, Suzy's eyes immediately lit up. He stepped forward without hesitation to scoop them up, System notification. Obtained military tactical dagger X1. System notification. Obtained common cabbage seed pack X1. System notification. Obtained common tomato seed pack X1. The exact moment his fingers gripped the loot, that cold, mechanical voice in his head chimed in right on cue. Ding! Host has triggered the 10x supply multiplier. Critical hit system fully activated. Congratulations to the host. You have received military tactical dagger X10. Congratulations to the host. You have received common cabbage seed pack X10 and tomato seed pack X10. Boom! You just unlocked 10 packs of common cabbage seeds, plus another 10 packs of tomato seeds. But wait, it gets better. In next split second, 10 gleaming tactical daggers and a fresh pile of vegetable seeds materialized right out of thin air, landing perfectly at Susie's feet. He casually scooped one up and weighed it in his hand. Oh yeah, this thing was pure quality. It had a lethal, razor-sharp edge, wicked serrations along the spine, and a tactical anti-slip grip that melted right into his palm. Absolute top-tier gear. Susie couldn't help but let out an impressed whistle. Look, in a brutal world, where bloodthirsty monsters could ambush you at any moment, having a reliable, high-grade melee weapon gave him a massive surge of pure security. He smoothly slid the blade right into the leather belt wrapped around his waist, instantly feeling his confidence skyrocket. As for those vegetable seeds, total unexpected jackpot. This meant he'd soon be harvesting fresh greens to keep his health and vitamins fully topped off. All right, I'll keep 2 of these bad boys as personal spares, he muttered. But the other 8? They're going straight to the market to absolutely fleece everyone. A cold, calculating smirk spread across Susie's face. There were currently 10,000 players trapped in this starter zone, and the vast majority had absolutely nothing, except a single garbage fishing rod. They were totally defenseless. So the second real, lethal weapons hit the market, the entire chat zone was going to absolutely lose its mind. Without wasting a single second, he pulled up the trade district and listed all 8 tactical daggers for the ultimate hustle. Seller, Susie. Item listed. Military grade, tactical dagger X1. Required materials, 300 wood, 300 stone, 300 dirt, or 2 Void Island foundation stones. Open to mixed offers. Slide into my DMs to negotiate terms. Current stock, 8 remaining. Seller's note. This is a genuine, high-tier weapon. Absolute essential for hunting monsters and surviving this hellhole. Extremely limited stock. First come, first served. Broke beggars and scammers. Don't even bother. The moment that listing hit the global market, the already frantic regional chat room instantly exploded into pure, unadulterated chaos. Holy crap. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? A weapon. A literal weapon. A tactical dagger. Bro, this guy has to be using cheat codes. Bro, we're all out here fishing up literal garbage cloth and wood splinters. And this absolute Chad is pulling military gear out of thin air. God, Susie. Please, big boss, spare me just one dagger. I swear I just saw a massive shadow creeping through the clouds, staring right down at me a minute ago. I'm literally crying and throwing up right now. I need a weapon to survive. But wait, that asking price is fucking insane. 300 raw materials? We couldn't scrape that much together, even if we liquidated every single thing we own. Unsurprisingly, Susie's private inbox was instantly bombarded. Hundreds of messages were flying in so fast. It looked like a digital waterfall. Every desperate clown and clout chaser was crawling out of the woodwork. Suddenly, a guy named Lee Jinon slid into his DMs. Listen up, little brother Susie. Back in the real world, I'm the multi-millionaire CEO of the Jangwo Group. Sell me all 8 daggers right now. The second we get back to reality, I'll wire you 10 million, 50 million bucks. I swear on my life. Reading the message, Sushi just let out a cold laugh. Return to reality? Did these absolute clowns think this was some kind of game? He fired back a savage reply, telling Lee to take his imaginary 50 million and spend it in the afterlife. Then, he hit him with an instant block. Right on cue, a woman named Zhang Shuai slid into his DMs, dripping with pure, toxic self-righteousness. Sushi, we're all out here fighting for our lives against monsters. As a fellow human survivor, since you have so many weapons, you should be giving them away for free to protect everyone. Selling them at these insane scalp prices is literally profiting off a global apocalypse. How do you even sleep at night? Sushi was utterly disgusted by her pathetic moral blackmail and clapped back hard. My conscience is clear, sweetie. In fact, I'd gladly use one of these daggers to slice you open, just to shut you up. Get lost. Bone blocked. But while the broke haters were spamming him, there were plenty of high-tier players, packed with actual, loaded resources. Out of 10,000 people in this zone, a chosen few were either insanely lucky, or absolute sweatlords grinding the gacha fishing nonstop. In less than 10 minutes, Sushi's inbox was flooded with massive trade offers. Hey, big shot, I'll give you 2 Void Island Foundation stones. For just 1 dagger. Goetsu. I've got 200 wood and 100 stone. Let's trade. 300 dirt, right here. Instant swap, hit me up. Sushi rapidly sorted through the premium offers, instantly liquidating all 8 daggers. Blinding flashes of light erupted, as dozens of precious Void Island Foundation stones, alongside massive piles of timber, stone, and dirt materialized straight into his inventory. This single, legendary trading spree had just secured all the starter capital he needed to build his empire. Without wasting a second, he pulled out the dirt, measured out a nice 2-square-meter plot on the left wing of his floating island. Right next to his cabin, he laid down the rich soil, leveling it perfectly, and transformed the bare ground into a neat little farm plot. Next, he carefully ripped open the seed packets and sowed the cabbage and tomato seeds evenly across the fresh soil. Water is the source of life, boys. Consider yourselves blessed. Sushi grabbed a plastic jug overflowing with pure, clean water and thoroughly drenched the freshly planted soil. A rich, damp, earthy aroma wafted up, almost as if the ground itself was humming with mystical energy. Sushi was completely locked in, hyper-focused on his crops, when suddenly, a sharp, violent screeching sound echoed right behind him. He whipped around in a flash. The bamboo fishing rod he jammed into the rocky crevice for AFK automated fishing was now bent into an insane, terrifying arch, looking like it was going to snap in half at any microsecond. Whoa, we've got an absolute monster on the line. Successe ais widened in pure shock. Dropping the water bottle, he dashed forward in a single, explosive stride, and death gripped the handle of the straining rod. But the exact millisecond his fingers wrapped around it, an absolutely monstrous force violently yanked back. Deep within the swirling sea of clouds, something massive yanks back, nearly dragging him, and his fishing rod right off the cliff into the abyss. Hold steady, Susai. He plants his boots deep into the dirt, leaning his entire body weight backward over the edge, locking his core until his muscles turn to absolute stone. The sheer force pulling from the fog is terrifying. This isn't some regular supply crate reel in. It feels like a straight-up tug-of-war with a charging rhino. The bamboo rod groans under the insane pressure, hairline fractures splintering all across its surface. The rough handle shreds his palms, sending fresh blood welling up between his thumbs. But he grits his teeth, refusing to let go. He knows the ultimate rule of survival here. The harder the pull, the crazier the loot waiting on the hook. This brutal, agonizing stalemate drags on for 24 whole minutes. Suzai's stamina meter is hitting rock bottom. Sweat completely drenches his back and pours off his chin. Finally, the violent thrashing beneath the clouds begins to weaken. That raw, monstrous power fading away. Now's my chance. Suzai spots the opening instantly. He takes a massive breath, veins bulging furiously down his arms, and lets out a primal roar, pouring every single ounce of his remaining strength into one violent, heaven-defying yank. The mist explodes. The churning gray sea of clouds rips wide open, and a weathered wooden barrel, dripping with heavy mist, is launched violently into the air. The barrel arcs high across the sky and comes crashing down onto the dirt right at Suzai's feet. With a heavy, satisfying thud, Suzai collapses straight onto the ground, gasping wildly for oxygen, his forearms shaking uncontrollably. Wiping the sweat from his eyes, he crawls over to inspect his prize. The barrel looks ancient, its rusted iron rings coated in dark, slimy moss. He forces the lid open with a hard pry. Inside, it's completely empty, except for a single roll of sheepskin parchment, resting at the very bottom. Another blueprint. Suzai's heart skips a beat as he snatches the parchment up. Obtain blueprint. Simple wooden fence x10. Simple wooden fence. Unlocks structural fence, crafting upon learning. Cost, 5 wood per meter. Provides basic physical defense to intercept minor beasts and low-tier monster raids. Right on cue, that cold, robotic system voice echoes straight into his mind. Ding. Host has triggered the 10x supply multiplier. Critical hit system activated. Congratulations. The host has received simple wooden fence blueprint x10. Staring at the thick stack of blueprints suddenly filling his hands, Suzai's eyes blaze with pure excitement. Talk about perfect timing. This is exactly what he needed. He had been stressing out 24/7 about the cloud tide, hitting his island in just 7 days, clueless on how to survive the hordes of monsters that would inevitably crawl out of the abyss. But with these wooden fences, he can build a flawless defensive perimeter wall, sending his island's safety levels straight through the roof. Learn. Without a second thought, Suzai crushes the first blueprint, instantly absorbing the advanced crafting knowledge, flooded straight into his mind. He glanced at his backpack. He'd traded daggers and water for over 1,000 wood, more than enough to build everything he needed. Construct standing at the center of his island. Suzy activated the build function with a thought. With supplies in his backpack depleted rapidly, streams of white light flying toward the island's perimeter. A steady clattering of timber assembling filled the air, as waist-high fences rose all around the shoreline. Thick, rounded logs sharpened at the tops, nailed side by side within mere minutes. The entire 20-square-meter island was fully enclosed by sturdy wooden fencing with only a small, hinged wooden gate left open by the fishing zone. Suzy stepped forward and shoved the fence hard. It did not shift an inch rock solid, staring at his new defensive perimeter. The heavy weight of worry lifted off his chest at last. Meanwhile, panic spread like wildfire through the zone. Chat, everyone watch out. There are way more shadowy figures in the clouds now. I just saw a scaled tail sweep past my island edge. It nearly flattened my wooden cabin. I saw them too. Those monsters are swimming upward. Are they climbing out to hunt us? Help. I don't even have a cabin. Just sleep on bare dirt if monsters come up. I'm dead meat. Does anyone have defense blueprints? I'll pay top price begging you. Save me. Suzy shot a cold smile, reading the desperate cries in the channel. These terrified survivors were prime targets. For his trades, he opened a trade district again and listed the remaining 9 simple wooden fence blueprint listings. Seller Suzy traded item blueprint. Simple wooden fence times 1 wanted materials. 3 void island foundation stones or rare blueprints. Message privately stock remaining 9 note. Life-saving construction blueprint blocks. Monster attacks only 3 foundation stones per copy. No loss, no scam. Skip this and wait for death for 1 heartbeat. The chat channel fell silent after the listing posted, then erupted into a frantic buying spree. For wealthy survivors holding spare materials, 3 foundation stones in exchange for survival was an unbeatable deal. All 9 blueprints sold out in under 5 minutes. 27 void island foundation stones materialized directly in Suzy's backpack. The era of island infrastructure expansion begins. Suzu eyed his haul in the backpack with satisfaction. With these foundation stones, he could expand his island drastically. Whenever he pleased, night fell completely, plunging the entire sea of clouds into pitch-black darkness. Only faint light seeped out from Suzu's wooden cabin. He sat on his wooden bed, gnawing on a rock-hard black bread loaf and washing it down with purified water, forcing each mouthful down. The food was coarse and flavorless. Yet in this hellish void, a full stomach was a luxury countless survivors could only dream of. He let out a long breath, just as his racing heart finally starts to settle down, and he gets ready to crash for the night. A straight-up chilling, scratching sound shatters the pitch-black silence. Skrrrch, skrrrch. It sounds like razor-sharp claws, violently tearing into the wood logs. The agonizing noise echoes, sending pure shivers down his spine. But it gets worse. This isn't coming from the abyss below. It's coming from right outside his defensive perimeter. Something has actually breached the island. Skrrrch. The scraping gets even louder in the dead silence, like a rusty saw blade, dragging back and forth across Suzy's frayed sanity. His entire body goes completely rigid. He snaps upright out of bed, unsheathing the tactical dagger from his waist. In one seamless motion, his eyes locking on target, lethal as an apex predator. Something really made it up here. Suzy dampens his footsteps, prowling like a lethal, stalking leopard toward the cabin window, peering through a tiny crack. He zeroes in on the source of the noise outside. The darkness out there is absolute. Only faint, eerie glimmers cut through the dark. As the sea of clouds churns below, the sound is definitely coming from the fence, on the right side of the island. Suzy tightens his death grip on the dagger, holds his breath, and kicks the wooden gate wide open. Using the momentum, he rolls forward, flattening himself flat against the shadow of the fence. But the horrific scraping just won't stop. Gritting his teeth, Suzy lunges upward, blade raised high, and squints through the dim gloom. The very next second, he completely freezes. There are no fanged, grotesque monsters waiting for him. No terrifying scaled tentacles creeping over the wood. Instead, tangled across the fence posts is just a long, thorny vine whipped upward by the violent gale winds. The vine is pitch black, covered in vicious, backward curving barbs. It's thrashing wildly in the freezing wind, howling over the abyss, and those exact barbs were dragging against the wooden planks to create that nightmare. Scratching noise. Are you kidding me? Suze curses under his breath, his maxed-out anxiety instantly evaporating, only to realize he's completely drenched in cold sweat. Man, that scared me half to death. I thought the monsters invaded ahead of schedule. He uses his dagger to pry the vine loose, and yeets it back down into the sea of clouds, even though it was a total false alarm. This midnight jump scare serves as a brutal reality check. This void island is a total blind spot at night, without a single light source. He can't see a damn thing happening past his fence. If real monsters had actually crept up just now, the absolute darkness would have left him completely defenseless. I need to hunt down fire-starting materials. Yes, even basic torches will do. Making a critical mental note, Suze heads back inside. Needless to say, he barely gets any sleep that night, keeping the tactical dagger safely tucked right beneath his pillow. The slightest pin drop rustle jolted him wide awake. Dawn finally cracked, painting the sky in a pale, ghostly gray light that spilled all over the endless sea of clouds, with heavy dark circles weighing under his eyes. Our MC, Suzy, stepped out his cabin. His very first stop? The makeshift farm plot he had just cleared the night before. But the moment he walked up, he froze dead in his tracks. Vibrant, tender green sprouts were popping up all over the barren dirt. Are you kidding me? After just one single night, the cabbage and tomato seeds hadn't just sprouted. They were growing at an absolutely jaw-dropping speed, already standing a solid 2 to 3 centimeters tall. Bro, this growth rate is completely ridiculous, he muttered. It's literally like a cheat code. Kneeling down to inspect the young shoots. Up close, the realization hit him like a truck. This was absolutely no ordinary soil. The fusion of this void island's native dirt and the purified water he'd poured over it seemed to trigger a broken, insane, growth-accelerating effect. At this crazy rate, he'd be harvesting fresh, crisp veggies in just a matter of days. Hyped out his mind, Suzy marched straight over to his fishing zone and yeeted his line right back into the cloud sea. The crushing pressure of survival left him zero time to slack off. Sure, he had secured water and perimeter defenses, but his actual food stash consisted of nothing but a few dry, rock-hard loaves of black bread and some basic cured meat. Choking that down every single day was depressing, and it was seriously tanking his stamina. Recovery. Fortunately, the RNG gods smiled down on him today. In less than 2 hours, his bobber aggressively plunged deep underwater. Suzy reeled the rod in with elite practice speed, putting his whole weight into fighting the line. With a sharp splash, a square metal tin, alongside a small canvas sack, came crashing down onto the island's dirt. Suzy rushed over to scoop up his loot. System. Obtain canned spam X1. System. Obtain full flint and steel fire starter kit X1. Let's go. Suzy pumped his fist in pure elation. Exactly what I needed. Right on cue, ding. System. Host has acquired survival supplies. The 10X critical hit system has been successfully activated. Congratulations, host. You have obtained premium canned luncheon meat X10. Congratulations, host. You have obtained advanced flint and steel starter kits X10. A blinding flash of light swept across the ground, and suddenly a mini mountain of luncheon meat cans materialized, with 10 pristine flint and steel kits lined up neatly right next to it. Without wasting a second, Suzy grabbed one of the fire kits, then dug into his inventory to pull out some dry wood shavings and straw. He aggressively struck the flint. Crackle! A brilliant shower of sparks rained down on the tinder, and a thin, beautiful wisp of smoke began to curl upward. Suzy puffed out his cheeks and blew gently onto the embers. And boom, flames instantly flared to life. Finally, fire, as the radiant warmth washed over his face. He couldn't help but burst into a wild, triumphant laugh. He quickly stacked up heavy stones to build a solid fire pit, stoking the blazing flames even higher. Next, he popped open a fresh can of luncheon meat with his dagger, skewered the thick meat onto a wooden stick, and held it right over the open fire to roast. Just moments later, glorious fat began sizzling off the meat's surface, releasing a rich, mouth-watering aroma drifted across the entire floating island. Suzy swallowed hard, completely ignoring the blistering heat, and took a massive bite, perfectly crispy on the outside, and incredibly tender on the inside, bursting with savory goodness. This piping hot, calorie-dense, and fatty meal instantly comforted his starving stomach. Susie absolutely demolished 2 whole cans of roasted luncheon meat in a single sitting, chugged down half a bottle of purified water, and let out a deeply satisfied belch. Kicking back right next to the fire, he pulled up the regional world chat. The entire channel was flooded with pure, unadulterated despair. Last night's brutal, sub-zero cold snap left countless players suffering on the brink of death. I'm literally freezing. The wind didn't stop all night, and my wooden shack is leaking air from every corner. I swear I almost died of hypothermia. Does anyone have food? I'll trade literally everything I own for just one bite. I haven't eaten a single thing in 2 days. I don't even have the strength to lift my fishing rod anymore. So cold, so incredibly hungry. When will this absolute nightmare end? Reading through these agonizing posts, Susie simply patted his warm, stuffed belly. He had a completely full stomach, crystal clear water, and a cozy fire to keep him warm. Honestly, he was basically glamping out here in the wild. Even so, he knew his current clothes were way too thin, and he had to prep for even harsher weather ahead. He opened a trade board and threw up a brand new listing. Seller, Susie item canned. Luncheon meat X1. Looking for warm winter gear, windbreakers, heavy down jackets, etc., sleeping bags, or ultra-rare materials. DM for offers. Stock remaining. 3 note. Hot, high-fat, high-calorie meat that will literally save your life. Only accepting high-tier survival gear. First come, first serve. The exact second that post went live, starving survivors shivering in the dark, lightheaded with hunger, stared at the words luncheon meat with ravenous, predatory eyes. An absolute, frenzied bidding war for supplies instantly exploded in the chat. Meanwhile, Susie just sat calmly by his fireplace, watching the chaotic madness unfold with total indifference. In this brutal survival game, he was already miles ahead of every other human trapped on these islands. But to him, this was nowhere near enough. The catastrophic cloud, sea tide in 7 days, was going to be the real, ultimate test. Now, only 4 days remained until the cloud's sea tide hit. Freezing dawn winds sliced across the floating island, like sharp blades, waking Susie up right next to the dying embers. He rubbed his stiff, numb face, and walked straight over to the farm plot, right next to his wooden hut. The cabbage and tomato seeds he had planted just a bit earlier had grown at an absolutely insane, hyper-accelerated speed, supercharged by the island's magical soil and premium purified water overnight. Tender green leaves had already unfurled to the size of a palm. Their vibrant, lively colors stood out beautifully against the gray, desolate wasteland of the surrounding floating sky islands. At this ridiculous growth rate, I'll literally have fresh vegetables to eat by tomorrow. Susie grinned with massive satisfaction. With his mood completely lifted, he turned right back to the fire pit. He sparked the campfire back to life with his flint, pried open another can of Spam, and let it roast until the grease was literally sizzling. Talk about a breakfast of champions, washed down with crisp, pure water. Absolute warmth flooded his entire body, recharging his muscles with pure, unadulterated strength. Honestly, in this hellscape, where people literally bleed just to get a single drop of water, our boy Suze was out here living like a king. But just as he grabbed his trusty fishing rod to start his daily, grinding routine, a blood-red, high-alert system notification flashed inside every single survivor's head. Global regional announcement. Warning, total survivor count in this zone has plummeted below 8,000. Mortality rate has officially hit 20%. Hidden server condition successfully triggered. Unlocking regional leaderboards now. Regional leaderboards are now live. Current stats available for viewing. Sky Island territory size rank. Overall prosperity rank. Note, leaderboards reset weekly. The top 10 players on each board will be rewarded with a mythical survival treasure chest from a system. Good luck surviving. That cold, mechanical voice hit everyone like an absolute sledgehammer. Suze's casual smile instantly vanished, replaced by a grim look. Fewer than 8,000 left. It's only been a few days, and over 2,000 people are already dead? He muttered, completely stunned. Even though he already knew this world was a brutal meat grinder, seeing that terrifying elimination rate sent a massive shiver straight down his spine. Some starved to death, others dried up from dehydration, and countless others froze into human popsicles overnight. And then there were the absolute idiots who ignored the warnings, cast their fishing lines way too deep, and got dragged straight into the abyss by the nightmare monsters, lurking underneath the sea of clouds. Yeah, Human life out here was cheaper than dirt. But hey, no time to get emotional. Suze immediately tapped the new, glowing leaderboard icon, resting in the corner of his holographic UI. He needed to scout out his competition and see what kind of high-tier threats were hiding in this sector. Opening up the sky, island size rankings first. Rank 1, Suze's Island. Total area, 20 square meters. Rank 2, Zhao Tianba's Island. Total area, 12 square meters. Rank 3, Li Jiangwo's Island. Total area, 11 square meters. Rank 4, all the way to last place. Literally every single one of them was still hard stuck at the base 10 square meters. Suze rasta skeptical librao, and quickly swapped over to the Prosperity tab. Rank 1, Suze. Assets owned, a fully solid wooden cabin, a functional water purifier, a sturdy wooden perimeter, and a basic crop farm. Meanwhile, Rank 2, Zhao Tianba. Assets owned, a literal makeshift garbage shack, and a flimsy wooden fence. Rank 3, Zhang Shuai. Assets owned, just a generic, ramshackle wooden hut. Well, no surprises there. Suze let out a smug laugh. When you're blessed with an absolute cheat code, like the 10x critical hit system, your resource stockpile and base building speed are naturally gonna leave every other survivor eating your dust. He had effortlessly secured the #1 spot on both leaderboards, boasting numbers that absolutely flexed on the competition by a massive landslide. And the absolute second these rankings went live, the dead silent world chat completely exploded into pure chaos. Messages were flying by so fast, they were practically a blur. Holy crap, the absolute legend Suze just swept first place on both boards. Dude's totally hacking 20 square meters. Where the hell did he score that mini island expansion stones? I've been fishing for 3 straight days and haven't pulled up a single damn fragment. Look at the Prosperity leaderboard. A reinforced cabin, a high-grade water purifier. He even built defensive fences and active farmland. Meanwhile, we're literally sleeping in the dirt. And this guy basically has a luxury villa on his island. Lord Su, please carry me. I'll warm your bed, cook all your meals, whatever you want. I'll do literally anything just for a single bite of food. No wonder he was selling tons of purified water and tactical daggers in the market yesterday. He's already playing on a completely different level. The ultimate survival god. Messages flooded the global chat like crazy, leaving every single survivor stunned. They were left completely speechless by this sudden leaderboard reveal. In a brutal realm where most people were starving to death and lacked even a basic roof over their heads. Suyu's stats represented a crushing dimensional divide, blinding everyone with pure envy. An avalanche of private message requests poured in, like desperate snowflakes begging for a handout. Some pleaded to be taken under his wing, while others faked misery just to leech free supplies. Suyu's lips curled into a cold sneer as he casually scrolled through the texts. What a bunch of absolute fools. Did they think this was some childish game? Right at that moment, a glaring new post popped up in the regional channel. It was sent by Xiao Tianba, the guy perpetually trapped in second place, right beneath Suyu on both leaderboards. Don't let Suyu brainwash all of you. Xiao Tianba's avatar showed a bald brute, with a vicious scowl, his voice dripping with bitter jealousy. What makes him so special anyway? He just got absurdly lucky and exploited some game glitch. This is humanity's collective fight for survival. Yet he's hoarding all the damn supplies. He needs to hand them over and share them with the community. Otherwise, how are the rest of us supposed to live? The second Xiao Tianba's post went live. Several envious copycats instantly jumped in to back him up. Exactly. Why does he get a solid roof and clean water, while the rest of us are freezing and starving? This isn't fair. Suyu, don't be a selfish bastard. With great power comes great responsibility. Cough up your loot right now, or we're all going to boycott you. Nobody buys goods. We will completely ostracize him. Yeah, boycott the greedy prick. Force him to make that water purifier public property. Suyu almost laughed out loud at the nauseating moral blackmail lighting up his screen. These entitled idiots had warped logic beyond belief. Even in the apocalypse, they clung to this ridiculous rob the rich to feed the poor delusion. I fished up every single resource fair and square. Why on earth would I share them with you? Useless trash. He didn't even bother typing out a reply. In this dog-eat-dog survival world, raw power was the only absolute truth. If you try to reason with them, they just try to bully you. But the moment you flashed a cold blade, they'd instantly drop to their knees and beg for mercy. Only 3 days remained before the cataclysmic cloud sea tide. Just like the ancient prophecy warned, he had zero time to waste on these clout-chasing losers. Out of sight, out of mind. With a swift thought, Suzai slammed his status screen shut, instantly muting the toxic global chat. He took a deep breath against the freezing, howling winds battering his floating island, and gripped his janky, frayed bamboo fishing rod. His base defenses and stockpiles were nowhere near ready for the monstrous tide, hitting in just 3 days. The clock was ticking. The sea of clouds churned through the day, yet somehow stayed eerie and calm. Suzai sat motionless at the island's edge, like a stone statue, his eyes glued to the bobber, floating on the endless mist. Hours dragged on, and he caught absolutely nothing but useless driftwood and rotting garbage. Night fell hard and fast, and this time, the darkness felt heavier than ever before. Pure pitch black, zero visibility. Violent, savage gales ripped across the sky, wailing like a chorus of pissed-off ghosts. Suzai could barely even see the muddy ground beneath his boots, relying entirely on the faint glow bleeding from his wooden hut. The biting cold crept up his legs, sending violent, uncontrollable shivers through his spine. But he refused to back down, white-knuckling that fishing rod deep into the midnight hours. Just as Suzai's eyelids grew heavy with exhaustion, the bamboo pole suddenly yanked downward. Hard. Holy crap, it's huge. Suzai yoltidwaiidewak. Pure adrenaline flooding his veins. The tension was insane. The line was humming taut in the dark, about to snap at any second. He dug his heels deep into the mud, braced his core, and leaned back with everything he had. Get the hell up here, he snarled, his arm muscles bulging and veins popping violently beneath his skin. A frantic, furious thrashing echoed from the depths of the cloud sea. Whatever was on the other end was fighting desperately to drag him into the abyss. But Suzai didn't give an inch, holding his ground and reeling it in. Inbi agodingin. This brutal tug-of-war dragged on for 10 straight minutes. His arms were burning, feeling like they were about to rip right out of their sockets. Finally, the monstrous resistance began to weaken. Now, Suzai roared, heaving the rod backward. With one final, desperate surge. Splash! A heavy shadow burst through the mist, soaring through the air, before crashing hard onto the island's muddy shore. With a heavy thud, Suzai gasped for air, shaking out his throbbing wrists. As he stepped forward into the pitch black, guided by the dim firelight, his hands clamped down on a rugged, heavy-duty plastic case. What do we have here? Suzai snapped open the tight latches, revealing a matte black tactical flashlight with a sleek, military-grade frame. It feels heavy and incredibly solid in his hands, built out of premium, military-grade aerospace aluminum. System notification, high-intensity tactical flashlight acquired X1. But before Suzy can even celebrate, that all-too-familiar mechanical system chime rings in his head. Ding! Detection successful. Host has acquired resources. The 10x critical hit system has been triggered. Congratulations, host. You have received high-intensity tactical flashlights. Multiplied by 10. Right then, the plastic case on the ground glitches for a split second, and 10 identical, top-tier tactical flashlights appear lined up perfectly right at Suzy's feet. Damn, this system is absolutely broken. Suzy blurts out, completely hyped. In this power-deprived apocalypse, where the nights are pitch black and unforgiving, being blind in the dark is a literal death sentence. But with these bad boys, the darkness won't be messing with him anymore. Suzy instantly snatches one up and clicks the tactical tail switch. Click! A blinding, piercing beam of pure white light obliterates the darkness, shooting straight out into the endless sea of clouds. The beam is insanely powerful, cutting through dozens of meters of pure dark and completely exposing the churning gray mist below. Oh, this brightness is immaculate. Suzy beams the light back and forth in excitement, the brilliant glow giving him an unmatched sense of absolute security. But just as Suzy is flexing his new loot, the regional chat icon in the corner of his vision starts flashing like crazy, accompanied by a hostile, blood-red warning alarm. Frowning, he opens up the channel, only to see a 30-second voice message pinned right at the top. The sender's profile picture is completely grayed out, the universal sign of a dead survivor. Suzy hits play, and a blood-curdling scream echoes across his floating island. God, please help me. My island is literally tearing apart. It's climbing up. It crawled up the fishing line. No, my leg. Someone save me. There's something lurking under the clouds sea. It's eating me alive. The raw terror is drowned out by splintering wood, collapsing earth, and the horrific, wet sound of something crunching and chewing on flesh. Then total silence. The entire chat channel goes dead quiet. A whole minute of pure shock passes before someone finally drops a trembling message. What? What the hell just happened? What attacked him? Wait, I know that guy. He posted earlier saying he was starving to death. So he ripped up his clothes to tie an extra line to his rod, try to fish deeper into the mist. And then this happened. He was insane. We were literally warned not to cast too deep. There really are bloodthirsty monsters beneath the cloud sea. This is terrifying. I literally heard scratching sounds under my island a minute ago. I just want to go home. I don't want to die here. Absolute panic spreads through the chat like wildfire. A suffocating shadow settling over the hearts of every single survivor. But Suzy? He just closes the channel, completely cold and unbothered. That reckless idiot literally threw his life away, just to prove that these rules don't mess around. Anything below 30 meters was a straight-up death zone. Only 3 days left. Suzette gripped his tactical flashlight tighter, his expression turning cold as ice. Once the tide rolled in, the monsters lurking in the abyss would swarm the surface in massive waves. He needed to lock down every defense possible to survive this absolute nightmare of a trial. A freezing dawn wind, thick with fog, finally shook Suzy out of his light sleep. He rubbed his gritty eyes and sat up on his rough wooden bed. He'd only managed to catch a few hours of shut-eye, but in a high-stakes, nerve-wracking world like this, even a short nap was a massive luxury. Grabbing the tactical flashlight from his bedside, he shoved open the wooden door and stepped outside. The sun hadn't even broken through yet, leaving the cloudy sea wrapped in a suffocating gray haze. Suzy clicked the flashlight on, its blinding beam slicing right through the gloom and illuminating the entire floating island, as if it were the middle of the day. His first stop was the farm plot just left of the hut. But the moment he got close, Suzy's eyes widened in pure shock. Holy crap, these things literally mutated overnight. The seedlings that were barely palm-sized had experienced an insane growth spurt in the dark, reaching peak maturity. Lush, vibrant cabbage leaves grew thick and juicy, with each plant swelling to the size of a wash basin. Right next to them, the tomato vines were weighed down by plump, glossy red fruits covered in fresh morning dew, giving off an incredibly sweet, mouth-watering aroma. Coupling this island soil with purified water, this growth speed is absolutely broken. Susan swallowed hard. In this brutal, unforgiving wasteland, where everyone else was scraping by on rock hard, stale black bread and sketchy dried meat, fresh greens were a luxury fit for royalty. Suzy whipped out his tactical dagger, harvested 2 massive heads of cabbage, and plucked 5 perfectly ripe tomatoes. He walked over to his basic water purifier, cupped his hands to catch the clean water, and gave the produce a thorough wash. Not having a proper cooking pot wasn't going to stop him. He scavenged the empty, oversized luncheon meat he'd emptied yesterday, rinsed it out, filled it with fresh water, and set it right over the fire pit, striking his flint and steel. Sparks flew, and flames quickly began licking the bottom of the can. As soon as the water came to a boil, Suzy tossed in the chopped cabbage and tomatoes, then scooped out half a block of leftover luncheon meat, diced it into thick chunks, and dumped them straight into the broth. Just minutes later, a rich, deeply savory aroma drifted across the entire floating island. The sweet, tangy scent of the tomatoes, combined with the fresh, crisp notes of the cabbage, blended perfectly with the heavy, savory goodness of the meat. Everything bubbled away furiously in the boiling water. Gulp! Suzy swallowed a massive wave of saliva. He literally couldn't wait another second, snagging a chunk of cabbage dripping with rich meat broth. Using some crude chopsticks he'd whittled from tree branches, he shoved the piping hot food straight into his mouth. Damn, that's blazing hot. But man, it's good. The crisp, sweet burst of veggies, and the savory, salty goodness of the meat literally exploded on his tongue, absolutely waking up every single taste bud, completely ignoring the scalding heat. Suzu hoisted up his metal tin cup and started chugging down the broth and meat with massive slurps. He literally demolished the meal in record time, leaving absolutely not a single drop of soup behind. Instantly, a warm surge hit his stomach, rushing straight through his veins and into every limb. Suzu let out a massive, satisfied burp, feeling completely reloaded and alive again, brimming with an insane amount of energy. Full belly and fully fueled, it's grind time. Recharged, Suzu hyped himself up and walked over to his fishing spot, baited his line like a total pro, and cast his rod deep into the swirling sea of clouds. Turns out, Lady Luck was totally riding shotgun today. Barely an hour flew by before his bobber aggressively tanked underwater. Got a bite. Suzu dropped instantly into a rock-solid horse stance, gripping the bamboo rod tight with both hands, and yanked it upward. Surprisingly, the resistance was super light this time. With barely any effort, he reeled his catch straight out of the cloud sea. Thud! A completely drenched, mushy green canvas sack slammed onto the muddy ground. Suzu stepped up, quickly unbuckling the wet strap. Inside sat a brand-new, sleek black folding tool. Acquired. 1x Tactical Multifunctional Entrenching Shovel. A multifunctional entrenching shovel. Forged from insane high-tensile alloy. This thing combines a shovel, pickaxe, saw, hatchet, and way more. It's not just an elite tool for building, but also an absolute beast of a weapon for close-quarter self-defense. Jackpot! Suzu's eyes instantly lit up. Ding! Host has triggered the 10x supply multiplier. Critical hit system activated. Congratulations, host. You have received 10x tactical multifunctional entrenching shovels. Blinding flashes of light strobed rapidly, and 10 heavy-duty tactical shovels materialized in a neat row right before him. He grabbed one at random, flipped it open, and tested the weight in his palm. Solid and incredibly heavy. Its razor-sharp edge could chop through it just as easily as a full-sized axe. With these, I can pull off some seriously massive defensive upgrades. Right along the perimeter of my sky island. An entire defensive blueprint instantly flashed into Suzu's mind. But just as he was locking in to start working, the regional global chat, hanging in the bottom right corner of his HUD, suddenly went completely berserk. Zhao Tianba was throwing yet another massive tantrum in the lobby. Except this time, instead of just spamming toxic insults, he was flexing relentlessly. Yo guys, I just fished up a literal ultra-rare drop. A tattered survival journal. Pure, unadulterated smugness and arrogance. Literally dripped from Zhao Tianba's texts. You guys want to know what's written in here? It is straight-up nightmare fuel. In a few days, an unthinkable, apocalyptic catastrophe is going to sweep through this entire sea of clouds. Anyone caught lacking without prep is going to be wiped out without a trace. His words completely shook the remaining survivors, who were already totally paranoid after last night's brutal death. What kind of disaster is it, Brother Xiao? Don't leave us hanging. What does the journal actually say? Are monsters going to swarm up here? How are we supposed to defend ourselves? Please, just tell us what's in the journal. Save our lives. The chat was instantly flooded with desperate pleas. Seeing this, Xiao Tianbao finally showed his greedy side. Share it? Look, I fished up this top-tier intel fair and square. Why should I give it away for free? If you want to survive, you better start trading. I want wood, stone, island foundation blocks, food and water. Bring me whatever you've got. Give me enough resources, and I'll spill the truth about this incoming apocalypse, along with the ultimate survival strategy. Spots are strictly limited, so it's first come, first served. He was shamelessly weaponizing this information gap to bleed everyone completely dry. Yet, when staring death in the face, all logic completely flies out the window. It didn't take long for the panicked survivors to break. I'll trade 100 stacks of wood. Just tell me, what's coming, Brother Xiao? I have a floating island foundation block. Take it. Just give me the intel. Suze watched this absolute clown show unfold, and simply shook his head with a cold smirk. Idiots. Xiao Tianbao actually thought he held some world-ending secret, when all he really knew about was the upcoming cloud sea tide. But Suze had already learned the whole truth ages ago, from his drift bottles, and his info was way more detailed than anything Xiao Tianbao had. Let a guy hype himself up. When the tide actually hits, we'll see if his pathetic little hoard of loot can actually stop the monsters. Completely tuning out the chaotic global chat, Suze closed out the interface. He grabbed his tactical engineer shovel and marched right over to the wooden palisades, lining the outer edge of his floating island. It was time to get to work on fortifications. Meanwhile, Xiao Tianbao was ruthlessly scamming survivors in the regional chat, practically drowning in stolen supplies. Terrified out of their minds by the impending disaster, countless players willingly handed over their hard-earned survival resources, just for a sliver of hope to make it through alive, staring at the massive mountain of materials piling up inside his inventory. Xiao Tianbao's ego inflated to an absolutely ridiculous degree. He genuinely started viewing himself as the king of this zone, no longer feeling threatened by Suze, who had always completely outclassed him before. Think you're untouchable, Suze? You don't know the first thing about the absolute hell that's coming. In a few days, you're going to be just as dead as the rest. With a smug grin, Xiao Tianbao tapped on Suze's avatar and fired off an incredibly arrogant private message. Suze, I know you've been hoarding an insane amount of supplies, including that god-tier water purifier, but you are completely clueless about what's heading our way. Hand over that purifier and every drop of clean water you have. Bow down and beg me 3 times, and maybe I'll take pity on you and share the secret to survival. Otherwise, get ready to be ripped to shreds by monsters. Drowning impure, unadulterated terror. Meanwhile, right in the middle of digging, Suze's private message alert suddenly pinged. He stopped what he was doing and paused. He opened the message and just busted out laughing. Like, does this clown actually have rock for brains? Not trying to waste a single second, he fired back a savage reply. Keep your precious disaster for the afterlife. And hey, don't forget to pick out a nice urn for yourself. He hit send and blocked Xiao Tianba in one smooth, effortless motion. Imagine wasting your breath on a delusional fool who can't even see reality. Closing the menu, Susai tightened his grip on his tactical, multifunctional engineer shovel once again. His mission right now? Turn this floating island into an absolutely unbreachable, ironclad fortress. Sure, those wooden fences could hold off basic beasts, but an entire horde, or some massive boss monster, would tear right through them in minutes. He needed a secondary line of defense right inside the perimeter. Putting his back into it, Suzai began digging furiously, carving right along the inner edge of the wooden barrier. Even though the island soil was damp and heavy, that razor-sharp shovel sliced right through it like butter. The plan? Dig a massive, circular trench wrapping around the entire island, half a meter wide and a full meter deep. The grueling labor was draining his stamina fast. Suzai ripped off his shirt, going completely bare-chested, as sweat poured down his toned muscles and into the dirt. He was working like an unstoppable human excavator. Shovel after shovel, he cleared tons of earth, and after 3 brutal hours of grinding, a perfect, seamless ring trench completely encircled the island. But he wasn't even close to done yet. Suzai pulled out piles of extra wood planks that he'd traded for earlier from his inventory, and, using his tactical dagger, he whittled one end of each plank into a deadly point. He then slammed these sharpened stakes, packed tightly together into the bottom of the trench, all pointing straight up. Absolutely perfect. He brushed the dirt off his hands, looking down proudly at his handiwork. Now, any monster that managed to breach the outer wall would plunge headfirst straight into the pit, getting completely impaled by a forest of jagged wooden spikes. But after all that back-breaking labor, Suzai's stomach was violently growling again. He walked over to his usual fishing spot, splashed some freezing water on his face to wake up, and cast his line back out into the void. As dusk settled in, the dying sun bled a deep crimson across the sky, staining the swirling sea of clouds an eerie, ominous dark red. It was a genuinely chilling sight to look at. Suddenly, the bamboo rod in his hands jerked violently. Suzai reeled back with flawless, practiced precision, and splash. A square, camo-patterned cardboard box landed right on the island. Suzai rushed over to inspect his haul, his eyes lighting up with pure excitement. The exact moment he read the item label. Acquired. 1x high-calorie self-heating military MRE. A high-calorie, self-heating military ration. This was standard military grade, packed with compressed biscuits, dehydrated beef jerky, high-grade chocolate, energy drinks, and way more. All it took was a tiny splash of water to cook itself, providing a massive burst of energy and keeping him full for days. Hell yes, this is an absolute lifesaver. Once the monster tide hits, beasts are going to swarm up at any second. He won't have a single second to build fires or cook. But these self-heating rations, they completely solve his food problem. Ding! Host has received a 10x supply multiplier. Critical hit system activated. Congratulations, Host. You have received 10 crates of high-calorie, self-heating military MREs. We're talking full crates, not single packs. In the next instant, a massive mountain of camo cardboard boxes materializes right at Suzai's feet. Hyped out of his mind, he pries one open, finding 20 neatly packed MRE rations inside. 200 meals total. That's enough to eat until I'm sick of them. Cackling like a madman, Suzai rips open a ration pack and splashes in some purified water. Within seconds, the heating pouch goes absolutely wild, billowing scalding hot steam. Minutes later, a piping hot bowl of dehydrated beef rice is ready. He completely shovels it down, savoring the intense warmth, spreading through his gut from the high-energy meal. That clown Xiao Tianba thought he could scam me with worthless intel. Meanwhile, I'm eating like a king with maxed-out defenses, just waiting for those monsters to march to their deaths. Full and energized, Suzai hauls all the MRE crates into his wooden cabin for safe storage. As night falls, he clicks on his high-lumen tactical flashlight, piercing the beam deep into the sea of clouds. Only 2 days are left before the tide, and the climate of the Cloud Sea is throwing a total tantrum. The once mild, cool breeze instantly turns biting and brutal, with temperatures plummeting by over 10 degrees. Worse still, the pale, gray sea of clouds is rapidly darkening into an oppressive, charcoal black. Thick clouds churn furiously like a boiling cauldron, with low, ominous rumblings echoing from the abyss, as if some colossal abomination is waking up in the depths. Panic completely breaks the regional chat room. Oh God, look at the sky. The clouds have turned pitch black. I saw it. I leaned over the edge and spotted a massive, dark shadow gliding right beneath the mist. It was easily dozens of meters long. Monsters! They're coming. Save me. This cold is insane. I'm literally freezing to death. I'll trade all my resources just for a jacket. Xiao Tianba, you said you knew how to survive this apocalypse. Tell us right now. What are the monsters climbing up? Faced with the endless barrage of desperate pleas, Xiao Tianba, who was just busy scamming everyone, goes completely radio silent. His tattered journal didn't have any actual survival counter-strategies. It just had that one phrase, the catastrophe. He's currently shivering alone in his trashy shack, just as absolutely terrified as everyone else. Meanwhile, Su Zhe frowns against the biting gale. The temperature is tanking fast. This cabin is solid, but the wind is still leaking through the cracks. Without wasting a beat, he springs into action. Our boy was out here grinding, digging up mounds of soil with his entrenching shovel. He mixed the mud with water and wood shavings to create a thick, heavy-duty clay plaster. He then went to town, smothering every single crack in the cabin wall. From the inside out, he was sealing every gap tight for maximum insulation. And once the reinforcement was done, the cabin retained heat way better than before. By the afternoon, Susie headed right back to his trusty fishing spot. But the closer the tide got, the harder his bad feeling began to creep in. Wooden barricades and spiked trenches were just passive defense tactics. If he wanted to survive, he needed firepower, a fighting chance against whatever massive beasts were coming. Please, RNG gods, send me a weapon. Susie prayed silently, and as if answering his desperate plea. Crack! A terrifying yank violently ripped through his bamboo fishing rod. The stressed bamboo bent into a terrifying, dangerous U-shape, threatening to snap into toothpicks at any second. Holy crap, this pole is insane. Susie's boots dug deep, carving 2 massive trenches into the mud. As he was nearly dragged straight off the edge of the floating island, he let out a roar, flexing every single muscle in his core. To anchor his feet. Get up here. Damn it. Burning through every ounce of his energy, with thick veins bulging out of his forearms. He wrenched the rod backward with absolute beast mode strength. Boom! A massive tear split the Cloud Sea wide open, and a heavy, pitch-black, rectangular metal crate came hurtling onto the island with a fierce howl. It slammed violently into the mud, leaving a shallow crater in its wake. Susie gasped for air, his arms completely numb from the intense strain. Shaking the fatigue out of his limbs, he walked over to the mysterious black crate. It was forged from heavy-duty military alloy, its surface etched with a cold, metallic texture. Susie popped the latches open using his tactical dagger and lifted the heavy lid. Immediately, a thick whiff of industrial machine oil hit his nose. Resting neatly inside was a sleek, futuristic, all-black precision weapon. It featured wide, thick, composite limbs fitted with a complex, high-tech pulley system. It stocked beautifully sanded smooth, glinting with a deadly, cold luster. Right next to the crossbow lay a bundle of arrows, shimmering with a dangerous metallic sheen. Acquired 1x tactical compound crossbow. Acquired 20x alloy armor-piercing bolts. The tactical compound crossbow, a high-precision, long-range weapon of pure lethality, equipped with a labor-saving pulley system and an optical scope for devastating firepower, capable of easily piercing the skulls of low-tier monsters. Susie's breath hitched. A ranged weapon. Ding. Host has triggered the 10x supply multiplier. Critical hit system activated. Congratulations, host. You have received 10x tactical compound crossbows. Congratulations, host. You have received 200x alloy armor-piercing bolts. A blinding white light flashed before his eyes. And suddenly, 10 cold, lethal crossbows and 200 razor-sharp alloy bolts were neatly spread across the muddy ground at his feet. Huh, with an arsenal like this, what kind of monster did he even have to fear? Absolutely overjoyed, Susie grabbed one of the crossbows, feeling its heavy, powerful weight solid in his grasp. He slammed his foot down into the stirrup and yanked the heavy string back with both hands. Click! The bowstring locked perfectly into the trigger. He slid a high-grade alloy bolt into the groove, raised the massive weapon, and lined up the optical scope right at a thick wooden palisade post about 10 meters out. Let's see what this bad boy can do. Suze's eyes went cold as he squeezed the trigger. Twang! A violent vibration shook the entire bow as the projectile ripped through the air like a bolt of pitch-black lightning. Squelch! That solid log, which was literally as thick as a grown man's thigh, was completely obliterated by the alloy bolt. The arrowhead blasted straight out the other side, vanishing into the open sky as with splinters rained everywhere. Holy crap, this penetration power is absolutely insane. Staring at the massive, see-through hole blown in the timber, Suze let out a sharp breath in sheer awe. With 10 of these tactical crossbows and 200 armor-piercing bolts, his floating island's defense grid was finally officially maxed out. Long-range sniping with the crossbows, and close-quarters execution via the spike trenches, and military-grade shovels. Let them come. Crossbow in hand, Suze walked right up to the island's edge, staring down coldly at the churning, pitch-black sea of clouds below him. I don't care what kind of monsters you are. Try climbing up here, and you're leaving in a body bag. As night fell, the final countdown began. Less than 48 hours left, until the catastrophic cloud sea tide mentioned on the parchment scroll arrived. Suddenly, the temperature on the island nosedived straight to sub-zero, and howling gale-force winds sliced through the air like freezing razor blades. Meanwhile, the regional world chat totally erupted into pure chaos. And the reason for the panic? None other than Zhao Tianba, the guy who'd been flexing nonstop about having secret intel on the upcoming apocalypse. He couldn't fake it anymore. As the weather conditions got increasingly brutal, the desperate survivors who had traded away all their life-saving resources for his inside info started spamming his name like crazy, begging him for defensive blueprints and strategies. After dodging the questions and stuttering for ages, Zhao Tianba finally cracked and admitted the truth. Look, all the diary says is that a catastrophe is coming. I don't even know what the monsters look like. The entire chat room went dead silent for a single heartbeat. And then an absolute flame war broke out. Screw you, Zhao Tianba, you absolute piece of trash. I traded 50 stacks of premium lumber and 3 whole bottles of water for your fake intel. Is this a joke? You dirty scammer. You toxic thief, give me back my foundation block right now. I literally needed that to expand my island and stay alive. I hope your entire bloodline rots, Zhao Tianba. Go die in a hole. Seriously, everyone listen up. Anybody who buys from this clown on the market again is a spineless idiot. We're all dead. We are completely screwed. We don't even know how to build defenses. Every single one of us is going to get wiped off our pathetic islands. The exact moment the event drops, pure despair and blinding rage infected the entire global channel. At first, Zhao Tianba tried to toxic talk his way out of it with petty insults, but he was instantly buried under thousands of furious, hateful messages. Too terrified to type another single word, he just sat shivering inside his warm cabin as he chowed down on a hot self-heating MRE. Suze watched the global chat with a cold, mocking sneer. Idiots will be idiots. Look at them fighting among themselves, even with death literally breathing down their necks. None of these fools realized that once the first month wrapped up and the system's newbie protection grace period expired, their basic fishing rods were going to get a massive upgrade. Right now, the maximum line length was capped at 30 meters. But post-upgrade, we're talking a flat 100 meters. Deep down in that 100-meter abyss of the cloud sea, the variety and quality of loot boxes would skyrocket. But first, they actually had to survive the incoming monster tide. Just as Suze was about to close the interface and get back to grinding, a private message suddenly flashed on his screen. The sender was a guy named Wang Chong, whose profile picture showed a scrawny dude with shifty, rat-like eyes. Jo, Bixiotsusei. I just fished up an ultra-rare, glowing stone. This has got to be a top-tier legendary crafting material. I don't want much, just 3 bottles of purified water, plus 2 cans of luncheon meat. And this glowing stone is all yours. Don't sleep on this deal, boss. Suze raised an eyebrow and opened the item. Screenshot the scammer had sent over. It was literally just an ordinary rock, coated in some cheap, unknown fluorescent powder that was crudely slapped on. Smudged mud was blatantly visible along its jagged edges, where the glow-in-the-dark coating hadn't even been smoothed out. You seriously think you can play me with this garbage? Do I look like a charity house to you? A cold, murderous glint flashed across Suze's eyes. With deadly danger closing in from all sides. These desperate players had completely thrown their morality out the window. They'd stoop to any pathetic, underhanded trick, just to swindle life-saving food and water. If he didn't teach these parasites a brutal lesson right now, more of these annoying pests would keep spamming his inbox nonstop. Without saying another word, Su Zhe opened his inventory, took a crisp screenshot of the stat panel for his tactical crossbow, which gleamed with a terrifying, icy metallic sheen, and dropped it directly into the regional world chat, attaching a chilling line of text. I'm a reasonable guy, but my steel bolts aren't. Anyone else who slides into my DMs, trying to scam my supplies with worthless trash will get a personal lesson in manners from me. The absolute second this tide passes, the moment that screenshot hit the feed, the entire global channel went dead silent. It was as if someone had instantly choked the life out of every single user. A solid 30 seconds ticked by before the entire chat absolutely exploded into pure chaos, with messages scrolling so fast they turned into a total blur on screen. Holy hell, what am I even looking at? A tactical crossbow? That's literal military-grade weaponry. Look at that high-precision optical scope. And those alloy, armor-piercing bolts. Bro, that kind of firepower? One single shot would blow a human skull clean open. He's insane, totally out of his mind. We're out here defending our bases with basic sticks and stones, while Godsu is flexing heavy artillery. How the hell are we even supposed to compete with that? Olay gran pasue. May Grandpa Su live forever. Yo, where's that clown Wong Chong who tried to scam him? Get out here right now and beg for mercy. Bro, that armor penetration is insane. Look at those stats. This is literally the king of melee weapons. Anyone dumb enough to cross paths with Su Zhai won't even realize they're dead before it's too late. Meanwhile, Wong Chong, the guy who just tried to swindle his water, was staring at the global chat screenshot in absolute horror. His garbage fishing rod slipped right out of his hands, clattering into the mud as a massive, wet stain completely spread across the crotch of his pants. With his hands shaking uncontrollably, he started spamming desperate apology DMs straight to Su Zhai. He literally dropped to his knees in the filth, slamming his forehead violently against the ground. He did this like a dozen times, utterly terrified that Su Zhai would hold a grudge. Su Zhai just let out a cold scoff, completely ignored every single DM, and closed the menu panel entirely. The flex had worked perfectly. These low-tier crooks wouldn't dare harass him again, not until they figured out exactly what kind of heat he was packing. Finally, some actual peace and quiet. Back to the grind, Su Zhai pushed open the wooden door and strode purposefully toward the fishing zone, right at the edge of his floating island. But the gale outside was brutal. The wind howled so fiercely, it nearly blew him right off the cliffside. Thinking fast, Su Zhai used a shovel to dig a ditch in the dirt, wedging his feet firmly inside to anchor himself, before casting his fishing line deep out into the swirling, ash-gray sea of clouds. Minutes slowly ticked by one. A freezing, damp mist whipped through the raging gale, roaring around the floating island, like a horde of invisible, savage beasts. For exhausting hours dragged on, with the bobber tossing wildly in the wind. Yet nothing bit the line even once. Just when Su Zhai thought he was going to walk away empty-handed, the bamboo fishing rod his grip suddenly violently lurched downward. The pull wasn't fast or aggressive, but it felt unbelievably heavy, like he had just hooked a massive solid block of iron. Got a bite. Su Zhai's eyes narrowed instantly. He braced his core, gripped the handle with white knuckles, and hauled back with every ounce of his strength. The fishing line stretched dead taut, creaking loudly under the strain. Get up here, Su Zhai roared, veins completely bulging out on his forearms. He stumbled backward a step, using his entire body weight to yank upward with immense force. Splash! The murky gray clouds tore wide open, and a heavy, square red crate came flying through the air before crashing heavily into the mud below. Gasping for breath, Su Zhai rushed right over. It was a container made of heavy-duty, waterproof military material marked with a prominent white cross. Right in the center, medical supplies. Su Zhai's heart started hammering wildly as he eagerly pried open the heavy crate latches. System alert. Obtained 1 advanced first aid medical kit. First aid medical kit contents: 1 X box of high-purity, broad-spectrum antibiotics, 1 X box of potent painkillers, 5 X rolls of sterile medical gauze, 1 X bottle of medical alcohol, 1 X set of surgical blades, plus suturing thread and needles. Staring at the insane haul inside, Suzu's breath instantly hitched. In this brutal survival wasteland, where a basic common cold is a literal death sentence, medicine wasn't just scarce. It was 10,000 times more precious than food or water. Ding! Host has secured a tenfold supply multiplier. Critical hit system activated. Congratulations, Host. You have received 10 advanced first aid medical kits. A blinding flash of white light erupted before him, and suddenly 10 identical, crimson waterproof crates materialized neatly at his feet. Let's go. Absolutely hyped. Suzu pumped his fist against the wooden barrier, standing right next to him. 10 medical kits meant 10 massive boxes packed with antibiotics, and 10 whole boxes of high-grade painkillers. With the catastrophic apocalyptic tide looming large, these supplies were basically 10 extra lives in his pocket. As long as some monster didn't bite his head completely off. In one shot, he could claw his way back from the most gruesome wounds imaginable. Supplies are fully stacked. Defenses are maxed out. Let's see what this notorious cloud sea tide is actually made of. Suzu carefully hauled all 10 medical crates straight back into his rustic wooden cabin and secured them in a safe spot. He then grabbed his tactical crossbow, wiping the optical scope clean with the edge of his shirt. A killer, ferocious glint flashing in his eyes. The final dawn before the tide's arrival broke, and the entire cloud sea world had mutated completely. The once pale, gray cloud banks turned as pitch black as ink, looking as if the entire sky was collapsing inward, pressing down heavily on every survivor's head like a death sentence. The wind wasn't just howling anymore. It shrieked like an army of vengeful ghosts, screaming directly into your ears. The floating island shuddered violently under the massive gale, threatening to shatter into pieces at any second. Suzu stood right by his cabin window, peering through a small crack to monitor the chaos outside. Suddenly, his pupils contracted sharply. Vast waves of dark, toxic green mist churned violently out from the ink black depths of the cloud sea. Thick and suffocating, the fog reeked of absolute, sickening rot. Riding the gale winds, it surged toward the floating islands, like an onslaught of venomous dragons, bearing their lethal fangs and claws. Poison gas! Suzu's face went completely pale. He immediately pulled up the regional chat, and sure enough, the entire global channel was in total pandemonium. Cough, cough, cough. Someone help me. This mist is toxic. I took just one breath, and my lungs feel like they're literally exploding. It burns. Wherever this green fog hits my skin, massive blisters just sprout instantly. Please help. Does anyone out there have an antidote? I don't want to die, cough. I'm literally coughing up blood. What kind of hell's cape is this? In barely 10 minutes, the regional survivor counter in the top right corner plummeted from over 7,000 straight down to just above 6,000. The main wave hasn't even hit yet, and this prologue alone is an absolute nightmare. Es should gespt in sheer horror. Right then, a massive wave of deep green, lethal smog rode the gale straight toward his floating island, forcefully seeping through the gaps in his wooden fence. Thinking fast, Suze grabbed a tattered rag and frantically stuffed every single crack in his cabin, completely sealing the poison gas outside. But instead of panicking, he locked his eyes on the churning toxic mist, his mind suddenly sparking with a wild idea. Wait, this stuff is toxic, sure, but at the end of the day, isn't it just another form of cloud mist? Amasi bipifani straxuse. He whipped around to look at the humming basic water purifier sitting in the corner of his cabin. The basic water purifier converts any liquid or cloud mist into pure, drinkable water. And any cloud mist definitely includes this poison fog. Suze slapped his thigh in pure hype. What everyone else saw as a literal death sentence was nothing but an endless supply of free water to him. Suze immediately sprang into action. He threw on the basic dust mask he'd scored from a lucky blind box earlier, took a deep breath, yanked open the wooden door, and dashed straight for the purifier. Time to drink up. He cranked the intake valve all the way to maximum capacity. Let's go, let's go. The purifier let out a deafening roar, its internal cloud filtering sand, glowing with a brilliant, nonstop blue light. An insane suction force erupted from the intake vent. The deadly green fog that was rampaging across his island was violently dragged toward the machine, swirling into a miniature tornado that vacuumed endlessly into the purifier. Chug, 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 chug. Heavy filtering sounds echoed from deep inside the machine. The lethal toxins were trapped firmly by the filter sand, while pure water was rapidly separated out. Drip, drip, splash. In less than 3 minutes, crystal clear, 100% pure drinking water started pouring out of the bottom spout. Huh, it actually worked. Eshusha laughed in absolute triumph. He quickly lined up over a dozen empty plastic bottles beneath the spout to catch every drop. Outside, the toxic mist grew thicker by the minute. Yet, Suze's floating island stood as an isolated safe zone. Every single wisp of poison, fog, drifting overhead, was greedily swallowed up by the purifier, instantly converted into bottle after bottle of life-saving water. Meanwhile, the regional chat channel was drowning in pure despair. Someone save me. I'll trade every single item I own, just for a single breath of clean air. Yo, where's Xiao Tianba? Weren't you talking mad trash earlier? Why are you quiet now? Did the poison gas clear you out too? I regret everything. Why didn't I stockpile wood to build a cabin sooner? While everyone else was drowning in despair, our boy Zai was chilling in his cozy cabin, whipping up a mouth-watering tomato beef stew in a heavy-duty iron pot over the fire. He took a massive gulp of the steaming broth and let out a satisfied sigh. This was the ultimate jackpot. Literally all he did was sit back and watch his water purifier put in work the entire afternoon. By the time the toxic mist finally cleared up at dusk, his inventory was loaded with a whopping 50 liters of clean, purified water. Yeah, you heard that right, 50 liters. In a brutal wasteland where people literally kill for a single drop, having this much liquid gold was an absolute game-changer. Infinite water glitch unlocked. Suzai smirked, tapping the plastic jug that was filled to the brim. But as night fell, the howling winds didn't slow down at all. If anything, the storm was getting even wilder. The sea of clouds surrounding the island turned pitch black, swallowing any glimpse of light. Suddenly a low, ominous rumble echoed from the deep abyss below, sounding like the literal gates of hell creaking open. Locking in, Suzai cocked his tactical crossbow, strapped an entrenching shovel to his waist, and tightly wrapped a high-intensity military flashlight. To his left arm, he pulled up a wooden stool right next to the tactical bunker slit he'd carved into the cabin wall, his eyes turning cold as steel as he stared out into the dead of night. His defenses were maxed out, and he was feeling unstoppable. Bring it on, he muttered. Let's see what this monster tide has got. As the clock ticked closer to midnight, the entire cloud realm went dead silent. The only sound left was the suffocating, heavy howl of the wind pressing down on the island. The very second the system clock struck midnight, beep, a blood-curdling, crimson emergency alert blared directly inside every survivor's head. Global district announcement. The Cloud Sea tide has officially begun. Warning, Cloud Sea backflow initiated. Acid rain incoming. Abyssal monsters have awakened. Survive. That is your only objective. Boom. The exact moment the system notification vanished, the entire floating island violently jolted, shaking so violently that Suzai was nearly thrown right off his stool. Crap, an earthquake. Suzai white-knuckled the window frame, just to keep his balance. He quickly clicked on the tactical flashlight, mounted to his arm. A blinding white beam cut right through the darkness, illuminating the sea of clouds just past the island's edge. But what he saw out there instantly made his eyes go wide with shock. The pitch-black clouds swirling below were boiling upward like a volcano, surging violently up toward the islands. Massive waves of dark mist slammed against the cliffs, splattering eerie, dark foam everywhere. And then a toxic drizzle began to pour from the sky. These weren't normal raindrops either. They were glowing with a sick, unnatural neon yellow. Sizzle, 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 wherever the acid rain hits. The cabin roof and the wooden fence outside. Thick white smoke starts billowing up, and the air fills with a corrosive hiss. This hellish weather literally leaves no room to breathe. Suzanne grits his teeth. Thank goodness. He had already plastered every single crack in the cabin, shut with mud beforehand. If that acid seeped inside, it would melt straight through his skin. Suddenly, illuminated by his flashlight beam, countless thick, shadowy shapes shoot forth from the surging sea of black clouds. These weren't normal monsters. They were twisted black vines of some unholy breed. Each vine is as thick as a human thigh, pitch black and lined with blade-sharp barbs that whip wildly in the wind, like giant, writhing tentacles. Crack, crack, crack. Several massive black vines lash hard against the wooden fence, slamming into Suzanne's island with terrifying force. Splinters go flying as the thick logs creak under the brutal blows. They're trying to drag the island down. Suzanne instantly realizes their true motive. They aren't here just to hunt humans. They want to tear the entire floating island apart and drag everything on it straight into the abyss. Scrape, scrape. More black vines crawl over the island's rim, writhing with a sinister, sentient purpose. They coil tight around the wooden fence, squeezing with enough power to rip the posts out of the mud. You want to tear down my home? Over my dead body. Pure murderous intent flares in Suzanne's eyes. He raises his tactical crossbow, lining up the optical scope with the thickest vine. In his line of sight. D. Suzanne squeezes the trigger. Twang. A dull boom echoes from the bowstring, and the alloy, armor-piercing bolt cuts straight through. The pouring acid rain. Squelch. Unstoppable penetration. With absolute power unleashed, the bolt strikes dead center, piercing clean through the vine's thick trunk. Hiss. The vine lets out an agonizing screech. Thick, reeking, dark green sap gushing from the wound. It thrashes violently a few times, before completely losing its grip on the fence, sliding right off the island's edge, and plunging into the depths of the cloud sea. It works. The crossbow's sheer power shreds their defenses. Suzanne's spirits soar. He jams his foot into the cocking stirrup, drawing, knocking, aiming, and firing in rapid succession. Twang, twang, twang. Huddled at the narrow firing slit, Suzanne transforms into a ruthless killing machine. One alloy bolt after another screams through the rain, precisely cutting down every single black vine that dares to breach his barriers. Soon, the ground outside the fence is stained dark green, with the vines oozing sap. Yet, there are just way too many of them. An endless nest of these things seems to be hiding deep within the cloud sea, and every wave he shoots down is instantly replaced by more. These massive vines just keep charging forward without stopping. Crack! Suddenly, a sharp splintering sound shatters the chaos. A whole section of the wooden fence on the right side of the island finally gives way under the insane pulling force of over a dozen black vines. It's ripped clean out of the mud as shattered timber flies everywhere. Damn it, Suzette curses, a dangerous, lethal glint flashing in his eyes, with the fence no longer blocking their path. Those python-like black vines flood through the breach, like an absolute tidal wave, swarming onto the island. They writhe and slither across the muddy ground, their razor-sharp barbs gouging deep trenches into the dirt. As they head straight for the cabin, right at the center of the island, staring down his broken defenses, Souza doesn't just blindly rush out to fight them, going hand-to-hand against painless plant monsters, in the middle of a raging storm and searing acid rain. Yeah. That's a total suicide mission. He quickly puts away his crossbow, slams the bunker shutter down, leaving just a narrow gap to aim through, and hunkers down deep inside the cabin. Come on then. Taste the little welcome gift I've prepared for you guys. Suzu sneers, his eyes locked onto the vines closing in at breakneck speed. 3 meters, 2 meters, 1 meter, just as the leading, massive vines reach the cabin's perimeter. The frontrunners suddenly lurch downward violently, completely losing their balance and plummeting. Thud, thud, thud. Heavy crashing sounds echo one after another. Turns out, Suzu had dug a massive, circular trench beforehand. The black vines were charging way too fast to break, tumbling straight into the 1 meter deep pit, like dumplings dropped into boiling water. And lining the bottom of that trench were countless, sharpened wooden stakes, pointing straight up in dense clusters. Squelch, squelch. Sickening, piercing sounds ring out as the pointed spikes brutally skewer the bodies of the black vines. Foul, dark green venom gushes from their wounds, mixing with the pale yellow acid rain, pouring from the sky, pooling into a nauseating, toxic sludge at the bottom of the ditch. Hiss! The trapped vines let out shrill, beast-like screeches from inside the pit. They thrash and writhe wildly against the narrow earthen floor, try to rip themselves free from the stakes with brute force. But the more they struggle, the deeper those stakes drive into their flesh. Some vines are pinned completely flat to the mud by multiple spikes, unable to move a single inch. Perfect! Suzu's eyes light up, a massive rush of adrenaline pumping through him. His 500 IQ trench trap worked flawlessly, completely shutting down the first wave of this ferocious assault. But wait. Suzu knows it's way too early to celebrate. More black vines are still pouring through the breach, without end, and the trench only has so much space. Once it gets filled up with the dead vines in front, the next wave will just climb right over them, would literally trample the corpses of their own kind, just to breach the defensive perimeter. Time to strike while they're down. Without wasting a second, Suzai raised his tactical crossbow, locking his optical scope onto the writhing mass of vines below. targeting the ones scrambling up the trench walls. THWIP. Fwhip, fwhip. The heavy, vibrating hum of the bowstring echoed in a relentless rhythm. Inside the wooden cabin, Suzai was locked in, fighting like a cold, ruthless sniper, his hands steadier than bedrock alloy. Armor-piercing bolts, packed with lethal kinetic energy, rained absolute hell straight down into the trench. With every single pull of the trigger, splat. A vine that had just peeked its head over the trench rim took a massive bolt directly to its core, snapping completely in two, before collapsing limply back into the dirt. Splat. Another bolt pinned a rogue vine that was trying to coil around the cabin's foundation, nailing it fast to the mud wall. Suzai was firing at a blistering, insane speed. Those 200 alloy bolts, multiplied by his broken tenfold critical strike buff, basically gave him infinite ammo to just keep blasting. His laser-precise, controlled shots pinned down every single vine pouring through the right breach, trapping them in the trench. Not a single one could cross the line. But just when Suzai thought he had stabilized the situation, the wind suddenly kicked up into a ferocious, howling gale. Whoosh! Storm. Winds laced with highly concentrated acid rain began violently tearing at the wooden palisades, guarding the island's left flank and rear. Sizzle. Sizzle. The corrosive hiss of the acid rain grew louder and deadlier, peering through the narrow, firing slit. Susai no uti seek. Blinding white smoke billowing off the defenses. Those heavy, solid logs were instantly pockmarked and eaten away by the acid, becoming incredibly brittle. Crack, crack, battered by the relentless wind and melting rain. The wooden fences groaned under the unbearable strain, teetering right on the verge of total collapse. Meanwhile, the trench outside the cabin was already half filled with a foul, dark green slush of melting venom and shredded vine carcasses. Damn it, the durability is dropping way too fast. Suzai gritted his teeth, beads of cold sweat breaking out across his forehead. The real, brutal, all-out defensive nightmare was only just beginning. Boom! A heavy, muffled thunderclap exploded deep within the churning, pitch-black cloud sea, acting as the ultimate war horn for a full-scale onslaught. Right after the thunder, the acid rain violently intensified, completely dumping down. It went from a sketchy drizzle straight into a catastrophic downpour. A massive curtain of pale, sickly yellow rain completely shrouded the floating island, filling the air with a choking, toxic stench of sulfur and rot. Crash, crash. The wooden palisades on the left and rear flanks finally reached their absolute breaking point, eroded to nothing by the merciless acid rain, and violently pummeled by the gale-force winds. Massive sections of the wall crashed down into heaps of splinters, reduced to nothing but splintered, rotting wood. Their entire defensive line was completely obliterated. An endless swarm of pitch-black vines surged toward the island, from every single direction, acting like hungry sharks that just caught the scent of blood. They slithered right over the corpse-choked trenches, whipping their twisted tendrils wildly in the air. As they lunged straight for the isolated wooden cabin, suddenly a massive, mutated black vine, thick as a freaking tree trunk, slammed violently against the cabin wall. The entire structure shook down to its foundation, sending chunks of dried mud exploding from seams. The mutated vine didn't stop there, snaking rapidly up the wall and coiling tight around one of the cabin's main load-bearing pillars. Crack! A sickening screech of crushing timber echoed out. Under the vine's insane, bone-crushing pressure, the massive pillar actually began to bend, deep, jagged fractures ripping across its surface. This bastard is trying to rip my house right out of the ground. Suzai's eyes blazed with pure rage. This cabin was his absolute last safe haven. If it went down, he'd be left completely exposed to the lethal acid rain and monsters. It was a death sentence. But inside the cramped cabin, there was zero room to properly aim his tactical crossbow. And even though the bolts had crazy piercing power, they just couldn't deliver a one-shot kill. Against a mutant vine, this ridiculously thick. Screw it. Time to go loud. Suzai tossed the crossbow aside in one fluid motion, yanking his heavy, multifunctional, military entrenching shovel right off his belt. He slapped on his dust mask, zipped his tactical windbreaker all the way to his chin, took a deep breath, and kicked the wooden door wide open. With one brutal kick, a gust of wind laced with burning acid rain blasted him straight in the face. The exact second he stepped outside, several stray droplets of the acid rain splattered right onto the back of his bare hand. Sizzle. A searing, Agonizing pain shot through his skin, as thin white smoke began curling off his flesh, which instantly bubbled into nasty blisters. But Su Zhe completely ignored the agony, his gaze locking on like a feral wolf, staring dead at the massive mutant vine, choking his support pillar. Get the hell off my house, Su Serov, exploding forward with all the leg strength he could muster, gripping the shovel's handle with both hands. He twisted his hips, channeled his full sprinting momentum, and brought the high-strength alloy blade crashing down into the vine. Squelch! The razor-sharp edge sliced through the vine's armor-like outer hide like it was soft tofu, burying itself deep into the fleshy core. Hiss! The mutant vine let out a deafening, unnatural shriek, gushing torrents of corrosive dark green venom from the wound. The toxic sludge splattered all over Su Zhe's jacket, hissing violently, and eating massive holes straight through the heavy fabric. Still not cut through? Then take one more. Thick veins bulged wildly across Su Zhe's arms, as he violently wrenched the shovel free, unleashing a savage, backhanded horizontal slash. Snap! This final, brutal blow completely severed the monster's inner tissues, slicing straight through the horror. The massive mutant vine is hacked clean in two. The half wrapped around the pillar just drops dead, while the other half recoils in pure panic, retreating back into the misty abyss. It was lightning fast, instantly switching from long-range sniper mode to an absolute melee beast. Suzy pushes his combat stats to the absolute limit. A massive adrenaline rush completely numbs the burning acid rain. For now, he swings his shovel like a madman, slaughtering every vine creeping around the cabin. With one brutal swing, he splits a stealthy vine right down the middle. A lethal backhand slash takes out another. Sneaky tendril, toxic sludge, mixed with a deadly yellow acid rain, drips down Suzy's face. He looks like a blood-soaked god of war, holding down the cabin doorway. Not a single vine can breach his defense. 5 agonizing minutes pass before the monster vines are finally terrified by his sheer savagery. Their attacks slow down to a crawl, and they finally slink back into the darkness. Suzy gasps for air, completely exhausted, leaning heavily on his tactical shovel, while standing knee-deep in mud, looking down at his arms and legs. His jacket is completely shredded, melted away by the acid rain and toxic venom. His bare skin is covered in horrific blisters and severe burns, hitting him with a massive wave of agony. Damn, that hurts like hell. He knows he can't stay outside for another second. He bolts back inside the cabin, slamming the heavy wooden door and locking it tight. He barely sits down to catch his breath when his eyes catch something flashing in the bottom right corner of his vision. His heart skips a beat. The regional chat icon is going completely haywire, glowing a violent, ominous blood red. Gritting his teeth against the excruciating pain tearing through his body, Suzy drags a red first aid kit out from the corner. He pops the latches open with his teeth, pulling out a bottle of sterile, purified water and several rolls of clean bandages. First, he carefully washes the acid rain right off his burned arms and thighs. Every single drop feels like a searing iron, making him gasp in pure agony. Once the wounds are cleaned, he rips open strong painkillers and dry swallows them instantly before tightly wrapping his injuries, layer after layer, with the sterile bandages. Thank God for the medical supplies from that 10x critical strike buff. Without them, the infection from these acid burns would have easily ended his run. Suzy thinks to himself, breathing a sigh of relief. As he finishes patching himself up, the meds finally start kicking in, numbing the intense, burning pain. Leaning back against the wooden wall, Suzy opens the flashing, blood-red regional channel with just a thought. And the second that chat logs open, a suffocating wave of pure despair completely crushed him. Help! Someone freaking help me. My floating island is literally ripping apart. Those mutant black vines just shredded the ground. I have nowhere left to run. Save me. God, it burns. This rain is pure acid. It got in my eyes. I'm blind. I can't see a damn thing. Wait. Oh God, monsters. There are straight-up monsters lurking under the cloud sea. I peeked over the edge just a second ago. And I swear to God, deep down in the dark, way down low, a massive, vertical red eye the size of a semi-truck blinked. It's watching us. We're nothing but snacks to this thing. This frantic voice note about the colossal eye was dripping with absolute, unadulterated terror, sending a violent shiver straight down Suzy's spine. A vertical eye as big as a truck? Just how insanely massive was this beast's actual body? Suzy took a massive breath to suppress the shock. Suddenly, he He remembered the warning from the message bottle. Survive a whole month, and your fishing rod gets a legendary upgrade, unlocking the ability to fish the abyssal cloud sea, hundreds of meters below. It all made sense now, if the surface level was already hell with killer vines and flesh-melting rain. Then the abyss, 100 meters down, must be crawling with nightmare fuel monsters. But hey, high risk always means high reward. The loot down in the deep would easily make the surface resources look like absolute garbage. Desperate screams kept flooding the global chat. But the most bone-chilling update came from Zhao Tianba, the once cocky bully who used to rule the chat room. His 1-minute voice message was now pinned right at the top. Susie, big bro Sue, I was wrong. I'll give you everything I own. Just tell me how to survive this. The vines are tearing through my garbage cabin. I can't stop them. They got my legs. Help, don't pull me under. I don't want to die. Save him, gurgle, gasp. The audio cut off violently with a sickening, bone-snapping crunch followed by muffled drowning noises, before dropping into a dead silence. Zhao Tianba's profile picture faded to ominous gray, the universal sign of death. This clown, who had scammed and robbed countless newbies, just to hoard mountains of loot, hadn't built a single real defense for his base. Those hyper-mutated black vines dragged him and his makeshift shack straight down into the void, leaving absolutely nothing behind but a crushed corpse. Susie just stared coldly at Zhao Tianba's dead avatar, without a single ounce of sympathy. In this brutal wasteland, fools only ever get one ending. He then glanced up at the UI, in the top right corner of his vision. Current regional survivors, 3,892 out of 10,000. Jesus Christ, Susie muttered in disbelief. In less than an hour, this apocalyptic disaster had completely wiped out over 2,000 players. The total survivor count had crashed below the 4,000 mark. This insane elimination rate was acting like a literal meat grinder, blending everyone to pieces. A suffocating dread paralyzed the entire global chat. A stark contrast to Susie, who was chilling in total safety. Our boy was chilling inside his max-tier bunker, fully loaded with endless food and water supplies. With his base defenses completely maxed out, he actually had the luxury to kick back and watch the world burn. In a global chat, honestly, this absolute god-tier level of security, earned only through meticulous, big-brain planning, was something those scrubs desperate for survival, on the absolute brink of death, could never even fathom. But right then, the chaos outside completely shifted. The sinister black vines whipping his cabin suddenly retreated, as if obeying some hive mind command, slithering backward like a dark, receding tide. The howling wind instantly died down, and that brutal, corrosive acid rain stopped dead in its tracks. A dead, eerie silence blanketed the entire floating island. Is the tidal wave finally over? Susai mater fronin, not letting his guard down for a single split second. The system announcement had explicitly warned everyone that the abyss creatures were waking up. There was no way a few basic vines were the real boss fight. And, sure enough, the very next moment, a deafening, ominous buzz echoed from the depths of the churning black sea of clouds. The sound was like millions of mutated flies, aggressively flapping their wings all at once. A harsh, grating drone carrying a foul, putrid stench as it charged straight toward his island. What the actual hell is that? Every single muscle in Su Zai's body locked up instantly. He immediately unclipped the high-intensity tactical flashlight, strapped to his left forearm, beaming its blinding light right through the bunker's firing slit, and straight into the pitch-black abyss outside. But the absolute horror waiting for him made his pupils dilate with pure shock, his stomach turning in violent disgust. Illuminated by the harsh white beam was a massive, shadowy swarm, erupting from the deepest trenches of the cloud sea. That was no storm cloud. It was a horde of countless, fist-sized, nightmarish flying insects packed together in a suffocating wall. Their bodies were a nauseating, deep crimson shade, grotesquely bloated like blood-engorged leeches. They completely lacked legs, but 2 pairs of translucent, razor-thin wings sprouted violently from their backs. They swarmed in massive, chaotic clusters, vibrating their wings so fast, it generated that agonizing, skin-crawling frequency. Damn it, it's a literal insect plague. Su Zai cursed under his breath, slamming the heavy steel cover of the firing slit shut, leaving only a microscopic sliver of a crack to peer outside. Thud, thud, thud. In the next breath, the apocalyptic wave of monsters blitzed straight into the cabin's reinforced outer walls. It was a relentless barrage, deafening. Heavy impacts detonated against the base, like a madman pounding on a massive war drum, making the entire structure shudder under the terrifying kinetic force. Suzai threw his entire body weight against the reinforced door, listening to the sickening scraping sounds echoing right outside. Instead of dropping dead after colliding with the thick planks, these monstrosities clamped their vicious jaws into the wood, deploying rows of microscopic, razor-sharp, serrated teeth. Creak, creak. A horrifying, bone-chilling chewing sound echoed from every single corner. Tens of thousands of ravenous insects were gnawing in perfect unison, aggressively stripping away layers of solid wood from his defense walls. Right before his eyes, these monsters are literally eating my house. Suzai's face went completely pale. Luckily, to block out the wind and acid rain earlier, he had sealed every single crack in the cabin with thick mud, mixed with water, and that split-second decision to save his life. If there was even a single gap left open, these fist-sized bugs would have flooded the place, devouring him down to the bone in seconds. But this mud seal wasn't going to last forever. The cabin's durability was absolutely plummeting under the relentless gnawing of the swarm. Suzai could actually see thin spots forming on the wooden planks, with a faint, ominous red light seeping through. I have to fight back. I can't just let them chew straight through my walls. Suzai grabbed his tactical crossbow, only to slam it down in sheer frustration a second later. Physical bolts were completely useless against a swarm this dense. One shot would pierce maybe 2 or 3 bugs at most, but there were literally thousands of them out there. Even if he fired all 200 bolts, wouldn't even make a dent. As for his shovel, charging out there for melee combat was a literal suicide mission. Just a dozen of those bugs latching onto him would drain him completely dry in a heartbeat. The threat had shifted from a test of raw strength against vines to surviving a massive, overwhelming environmental disaster. The pressure was suffocating, as if the Grim Reaper's scythe was already pressing against his throat. AoE damage. I need AoE weapons right now. Suzai's mind raced a mile a minute, his eyes scanning wildly across the cramped cabin. Purified water? Useless. Can't drown them. Shovel? Worthless. Medical kits? Even more useless. Suddenly, his gaze locked onto a massive stack of camo boxes, piled up in a corner. It was the 200 high-calorie, self-heating military rations he got from his 10x critical strike buff. Suzai's eyes lit up as a brilliant plan sparked in his mind. Self-heating rations, the heating packs, quicklime. In his old world, the core ingredients inside these self-heating food packs were quicklime and aluminum powder. When quicklime mixes with water, it triggers a violent chemical reaction, releasing an insane amount of scalding hot steam. Instantly, if you add water to it inside a sealed container, the trapped, expanding gas will rupture the container and cause a massive explosion. Physical attacks won't work? Fine, then I'll hit them with chemical warfare. Suzai lunged straight for the pile of field rations. Rip, rip. His hands moved like a total blur as he tore open ration after ration, completely ignoring the dehydrated beef and hardtack biscuits. Inside, he ripped out every single white, non-woven heating pad. 10 packs, 20, 30, thanks to the massive stockpile granted by his 10x critical strike buff. He could burn through these supplies with zero regrets. Screw the survival rations. While others would hoard and ration their supplies out of fear, those items were ruthlessly ripped apart. Right here, he grabbed several massive, empty plastic water bottles, tore open the quicklime heating packs, and dumped all that pale gray powder right into the bottles. In one go, each bottle held enough raw quicklime to fill 5 or 6 standard heating packs. Time for the catalyst. Add water. Suzai snatched a fresh bottle of purified water, took a deep breath, and his gaze instantly sharpened. With absolute, laser-like focus, he twisted open the water bottle, aimed it straight at one plastic jar crammed full of quicklime, and poured half the liquid inside. It was one swift, flawless motion. Then, with the sheer, lightning-fast reflexes of a guy who'd been single for 20 straight years, he screwed the jar's lid on as tight as physically possible. SSSSS. Barely a second after the lid sealed shut, a violent, chaotic boiling erupted inside the plastic jar. Instantly, the quicklime reacting with water unleashed a terrifying, blistering wave of heat. The jar expanded and warped visibly right before his eyes, and searing warmth seeped straight through his heavy gloves, into his palms. Take this. Suzanne threw open the cover of the firing slit, braving the swarms of venomous insects, surging in from the outside, and hurled the homemade device. now stretched to its absolute breaking point, hard into the densest cluster of bugs hovering midair. The exact second the jar left his grasp, Suzanne slammed the cover shut and clamped both hands over his ears. Boom! A deafening detonation ripped through the air just above the wooden cabin. The completely sealed plastic jar could no longer withstand the catastrophic internal pressure and shattered entirely. Scalding steam bloated from the intense thermal expansion, mixed with massive clouds of boiling quicklime powder, billowing outward through the heart of the insect horde. Like a miniature volcanic eruption. Squeal, 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 shrill, agonized screeches filled the sky all at once. How could those thin-winged, venomous bugs possibly endure such a devastating, improvised chemical countermeasure? The boiling steam cooked their internal organs instantly, and any flecks of quicklime dust, landing on their damp exoskeletons, triggered a secondary wave of corrosive burns. Crackle, pop, crackle. Hundreds upon hundreds of charred, half-scorched insects plummeted from the sky like dark, crimson hailstones, crashing directly into the mud surrounding the cabin, and releasing a sickening, rancid stench of burnt rot. It actually worked. Huh. Susie's eyes lit up with wild, unbridled excitement. He didn't pause for a single second, repeating the exact same lethal process all over again. Pour the water, screw the lid tight, and throw. Boom, boom, boom. A rapid string of explosions echoed across the floating island. Massive plumes of white, superheated steam laced with caustic lime dust bloomed outward like deadly, beautiful flowers, trapped in a literal sea of monstrous bugs. Our MC's explosive blasts start vaporizing the insect horde by the thousands. The creepy crawlies that were just aggressively tearing his wooden cabin to shreds instantly lose their minds from the sudden, hellish heat waves and nonstop explosions. Suddenly, that terrifying, collective chewing noise goes dead silent. After spamming more than a dozen high-grade quicklime bombs back-to-back, the temperature surrounding the cabin spikes by over 10 whole degrees. The entire air smells like toxic chemicals and roasted bugs. The surviving pests finally realize this heavily fortified little base is a death trap they can't crack. Letting out a panicked, chaotic buzz, they scatter in every direction like a retreating tide, scurrying straight back into the dark abyss of the cloud sea. Heavy panting, Suzai slides down against the wooden wall, desperately gasping for air, as adrenaline sweat completely drenches his shirt. But looking out at the massive graveyard of charred insect carcasses, a hyped, victorious smirk creeps on his face. First, it was that insane choking vine invasion, and right after a literal apocalypse bug swarm, armed with pure, unadulterated grit and an insane stockpile of resources, multiplied tenfold by his broken critical hit system. He just soloed 2 back-to-back death sentences. But before Suzai can even celebrate his massive W, his smile instantly freezes solid. A heavy, rhythmic earthquake suddenly begins to rattle through the floating island, right beneath his feet. Thud, thud, thud. It sounds like some massive, colossal entity is scaling the cliffside, creeping up step by step from the abyss below. Every single heartbeat-skipping thud sends a shockwave of dread through his soul. Damn it, when does this nightmare actually end? Suzai gnashes his teeth in frustration, his eyes locked like a laser on the island's edge, the exact spot where the ground is shaking. He snatches his tactical crossbow right off the floor and cranks the heavy string to maximum tension. A lethal, cold alloy, armor-piercing bolt sits locked and loaded in the chamber. Aiming down, the blinding beam of his high-intensity flashlight illuminates that exact stretch of the shoreline. If whatever boss monster down there dares to show its face, he's letting it fly without a second thought, blasting a massive, gaping hole right through its skull. The heavy thuds get closer and faster by the second, like the Grim Reaper itself is hammering furiously on his front door. Suzai completely holds his breath, cold sweat rolling down his face and dripping onto the muddy floor. He can literally feel the dirt beneath him bulging upward. Something absolute massive is about to burst out. At any freaking second, crash, with one final, thunderous explosion of sound. The earth at the island's edge completely erupts, sending mud, debris, and shattered rock flying everywhere. A massive shadow vaults up from the abyssal depths of the cloud sea, generating a violent gust of wind as it slams hard into the defensive trench Suzai dug out earlier, unleashing a deafening, metallic screech. Suzai's finger triggers squeezing down with extreme force. Milliseconds away from letting the bolt fly, But the moment his eyes focus, he froze dead in his tracks. But wait, this wasn't some snarling, bloodthirsty beast or a terrifying tentacle monster from the deep. Right in front of him sat a colossal metal treasure chest, standing well over waist-high and stretching a massive 2 meters long. Its rusted surface was heavily encrusted with black cloud barnacles, scarred with ancient scratches, and absolutely reeking of a foul, abyssal rot. It looked like some legendary relic that had been left dormant on the seafloor for over a century. But before Susie could even process this insane plot twist, a cold, piercing, crimson system alert violently blared directly inside every single survivor's mind, making their eardrums throb with pain. Global announcement. The first cloud tide has officially come to an end. Warning, the reverse cloud current has fully receded. All abyssal creatures have retreated into a state of hibernation. System notice. The second cloud tide will commence in exactly 1 month. The next wave of abyssal beasts will be infinitely more ferocious. Survivors must do whatever it takes to stay alive. Upgrade your fishing rods immediately and prepare to venture deeper into the perilous sea of clouds. The moment the system's voice faded out, the howling, apocalyptic winds that had been threatening to tear the sky apart died down instantly. The highly corrosive, pale yellow acid rain vanished without leaving a single trace. Just like that, the entire sea of clouds sank back into its eerie, lifeless gray haze, acting as if that catastrophic ordeal had never even happened in the first place. It's over. It's actually over. Susie exhaled a massive breath of stale air. His utterly frayed nerves relaxed all at once, and he collapsed heavily right into the mud, completely drained of strength, staring at the gigantic metal chest sitting right before him. The pieces finally clicked. He realized the true source of those terrifying tremors from earlier. Those heavy rumblings weren't the footsteps of a monster climbing out of the deep. Instead, the crazy, powerful reverse cloud current, triggered by the receding tide, had literally dragged this ancient tidal relic chest all the way up from the darkest cloud layers and slammed it right onto his floating island. Realizing his insane luck, Susie burst into hysterical laughter that echoed across the abandoned, empty island. Huh, I survived. To hell with this garbage tide. And screw those mutated black vines. All of you can rot. After letting out all that pin-up survival stress, Susie scrambled back onto his feet. His eyes were now blazing with pure greed as he locked his gaze onto the massive metal chest. This was the ultimate parting gift from the receding tide. Even a complete idiot could see that this thing was going to be absolutely packed with top-tier loot. Wasting no time, he unclipped his tactical, multi-purpose, entrenching shovel from his waist, marched right up to the chest, and jammed the sharp blade deep into the sealed seam of the lid. Open the hell up. The muscles in Susie's arms swelled instantly, veins popping aggressively as he threw all his body weight onto the shovel. A screeching, ear-piercing sound of grinding metal echoed out as the chest-heavy lock snapped clean off under his sheer brute force. Clang! The massive metal lid flew open, but surprisingly, there were no crafting blueprints or gimmicky items inside. Instead, 2 types of basic, yet insanely valuable building materials were stacked neatly inside. You have acquired premium pre-cut stone bricks x100. You have acquired rot-resistant planks x100. Premium pre-cut stone bricks, specially refined by elite system craftsmanship, boasts god-tier durability, and features interlocking grooves that fit seamlessly, without any cement. Absolutely unbreakable. Oat-resistant planks, thick timber soaked in a specialized preservative serum, 100% insect-proof, moisture-resistant, and built to withstand heavy acid rain corrosion. The ultimate construction material for survival shelters. Susie's eyes instantly lit up the moment he saw the loot. I mean, what do you need most right now? Top-tier defensive building materials. His raggedy old wooden cabin had been completely ravaged by acid, rain, and toxic bugs, leaving it riddled with holes and on the absolute verge of collapse. But with these premium supplies, he could finally build a straight-up impenetrable fortress. Right on cue, the cold, emotionless, mechanical voice of the system echoed in his mind. Ding! Host resource acquisition detected. Tenfold critical hit system activated. Congratulations! Congratulations! Host has acquired premium pre-cut stone bricks X1000. Congratulations! Host has acquired rot-resistant planks X1000. The very next second, a blinding, White light flashed violently across the floating island. When the glare finally faded, a towering mountain of stone, bricks, and lumber materialized, right in front of Suzy. A massive stack of 1,000 heavy, solid stone bricks, alongside 1,000 premium planks giving off a faint, medicinal, protective scent, literally covered nearly half of his entire small island. I'm filthy rich. Talk about the ultimate jackpot. Suzy pumped his fist in pure, unadulterated hype. With this literal mountain of high-end materials, he could actually start designing a proper base from here on out. Plus, the system announcement had explicitly mentioned upgrading the fishing rod. He vividly remembered the intel from the drift bottles. Basic fishing rods could only reach 30 meters into the shallow cloud layers. But once he upgraded it to 100 meters, the quality of the supplies he could reel in would see an astronomical leap. I've got about 20 days left before I can upgrade my rod. An ambitious fire ignited in Suzy's eyes. The next morning, the aftermath of the tide still lingered, leaving a foul stench of acid and burnt debris hanging heavily in the air. But Suzy didn't just rush into building right away. Instead, he pulled up the regional chat channel. In the bottom right corner of his field of vision, he needed to see exactly how many survivors were even left after that absolute meat grinder of a disaster. The exact second the interface popped open, a blood-red number in the corner struck him right in the face. Current regional survivor count, 3,102/10,000. Suzy gasped sharply, an intense chill crawling straight up his spine. Out of the original 10,000 people spawned in this zone, nearly 70% had been wiped out overnight. Over half the player base wiped out in a single night. Nearly 7,000 living souls had completely vanished, swallowed whole by the bottomless sea of clouds. As for the global death toll across the entire world, Suzy didn't even dare to imagine it. Opening the regional chat, the usual casual banner was completely gone, replaced by pure, unadulterated despair. Oh my god, I actually made it out alive. I survived, but the acid rain melted straight through my leg. The flesh is literally rotting off the bone. Someone please help me. It was absolute horror. Yo, did anyone else hear that last night? Right before the tide finally ended, there was this massive, sickening crunching noise echoing from deep in the clouds. It sounded like bones being pulverized to splinters. There's something colossal down there, just devouring everyone who falls. I heard it too. I heard that giant beast slithering below us. It sounded like a freight train rumbling beneath the mist. I never even saw what the hell it looked like, but I literally pissed myself in terror. I'd rather starve to death than ever drop my line again. My entire cabin is completely destroyed. All my supplies were totally corroded by the acid rain. I'm literally sleeping in the mud. I'll work like a slave. For anyone who can spare just a single sip of water. After skimming through the wave of terrified, please flooding the chat, Suzy coldly closed the UI panel. He knew better than anyone that, in this brutal dog-eat-dog reality, sympathy was nothing but worthless garbage. He'd caught faint vibrations of that massive, 100-meter-long monstrosity slithering last night. It was concrete proof that terrifying leviathans, capable of crushing them like bugs, were lurking just below the 30-meter cloud layer. No time to waste. I need to start rebuilding immediately. Suzy slapped his cheeks hard to shake off the exhaustion, forcing himself to focus. Grabbing his entrenching shovel, he walked over to his battered, hole-ridden wooden cabin. The structure had officially burned through, its very last shred of durability, against last night's insane bug swarm and acid rain, leaving its walls as flimsy as tissue paper, without a single hint of nostalgia. Suzy swung his shovel, demolishing the ramshackle hut in a matter of minutes, and reducing it to a worthless pile of scrap lumber. Once he cleared out a wide-open plot of land, he hauled over the premium stone bricks, massively multiplied by his 10x critical hit talent. Each brick weighed a solid dozens of pounds, perfectly polished with precision-cut interlocking edges. Going shirtless, Suzy hauled the heavy blocks, one by one straight to the foundation, slotting them together flawlessly like high-end building blocks. Click, click, sharp, satisfyingly crisp sounds echoed as the bricks locked into place. No messy cement, no tedious mitchering. Just pure, brutal efficiency. Suzy grinded tirelessly, working like a machine while pouring out buckets of sweat. In just 2 hours, a massive stone wall, 2 meters high and half a meter thick, rose proudly from the ground. And with a thickness like this, not a single bug or mutated black vine was getting through, would ever stand a chance of breaking through. Suzy patted the solid stone wall with pure satisfaction. feeling its icy, absolute strength against his palm. With the perimeter completely secured, he immediately moved on to the roof and interior lining. Grabbing the rot-resistant timber planks, he chopped them down to size, using only his tactical dagger and shovel, then layered them heavy across the stone walls to engineer a flawless, sloped roof. To make it completely waterproof, he packed thick mud and would shavings into every single gap between the planks. Finally, he hammered a solid layer of insulated boards all along the inner stone walls to block out the biting cold radiating from the rock. A massive stone and timber semi-fortress, spanning 5 square meters, now stood proudly at the dead center of his floating island. Totally unbreakable, it shut out the howling wind and rain entirely, and those massive, reinforced walls gave him an unmatched sense of security. But even after finishing the main base, Sushi wasn't about to slack off. Shovel in hand, he marched straight to the island's edge to repair the defensive trenches that were absolutely wrecked the night before. He ripped out all the shattered wooden palisades, sharpened a fresh batch of thick timber stakes, and drove them deep into the dirt. Next, he leaped right down into the circular trench, cleared out the tangled, bloody vines and grotesque insect carcasses, and dumped the entire mess straight into the sea of clouds. He then carved hundreds of lethal wooden spikes and jammed them, point up, across the entire trench floor. By the time he finished prepping his defenses, dusk had already fallen. Dragging his exhausted body, Sushi finally stepped into his brand-new stone and timber stronghold. The moment he shut the heavy, reinforced wooden door, the roaring wind outside vanished instantly. The interior of the fortress was surprisingly spacious, without a single drafty crack in sight. Collapsing onto the floor in relief, he struck his flint to ignite a cozy fire, tore open a self-heating military ration pack, and poured in some purified water. Just minutes later, a rich, savory steam came billowing out of the hot, dehydrated beef and rice meal. Sushi shoveled the food down greedily, feeling an incredible warmth spread through his chest. As the high-calorie food worked its magic, he sighed in pure bliss. This is what actually being alive feels like. Staring up at the unyielding stone walls, Sushi's sense of safety skyrocketed to an all-time high. If he could just survive the next few days and successfully upgrade his fishing rod, he would finally be strong enough to explore the deeper, far richer, and more mysterious cloud layers below. But just as Sushi finished eating and prepared to pass out for a long night's sleep, inside his cozy new fortress, that chilling, blood-red system alert blared inside his mind once again. Global announcement. Severe climate shift detected across the sea of clouds. A brutal, 7-day extreme cold period has officially begun. Warning. The ambient temperature will plummet to minus 20 degrees Celsius immediately. Attention survivors, get warm right now, or you're literally going to freeze to death. Are you kidding me? This godforsaken place never lets anyone catch a single break. Susie shot straight up off the ground, cursing up a storm. The exact second the system announcement cut out, outside the island, the temperature was instantly plummeting at an insane rate. That previously mild air, completely gone, replaced by a piercing wind, stinging his skin with razor-sharp ice shards. Even hunkered down inside the fortress, Suzanne could distinctly hear the ominous creak of ice, locking down the wooden palisades outside. With every single breath, a thick cloud of white fog exploded into the air. To make matters worse, he was still rocking that tattered windbreaker, the one absolutely shredded by last night's acid rain. The sub-zero wind ripped through every single hole, sending violent shivers through his entire body. As his teeth chattered uncontrollably, he scrambled to open the regional chat, and as expected, the feed was in total chaos. Someone help me. It's freezing and the wind is cutting like a blade. I literally can't feel my hands or feet anymore. I don't even have a cabin, just the clothes on my back. Save me. I don't want to freeze to death out here. This is pure insanity. Some idiot nearby just burned his fishing rod, just to start a fire. Does he want to doom himself for good? Burning a rod is nothing. I just incinerated all the rotten shoes and driftwood I fished up last night, but this fire is way too weak to keep me warm. Does anyone have a thick coat? I'll trade all my food and water for it right now. Staring at the desperate cries for help, flooding the entire channel, Suzanne knew this sudden deep freeze was about to be yet another brutal mass purging. Anyone without proper shelter or winter gear wouldn't last until morning. I can't just sit here waiting for the Grim Reaper. I need to fish up some cold weather gear immediately. Gritting his teeth against the agonizing chill, Suzanne threw open the wooden door of his fortress and bolted out into the open. The world outside had transformed into a literal frozen hellscape. A crystalline sheet of ice now coated the vast, grayish white sea of clouds. Bitter biting, gales whipped up shards of ice, slashing ruthlessly against his exposed face. Fighting against the raging wind, Suzy dragged his feet toward the edge of the floating islet. His hands were completely numb from the frostbite, yet he clenched his fishing rod with a death grip, hurling the baited iron hook deep into the icy cloud ocean. Time dragged on at a snail's pace, with every passing second feeling like pure torture for Suzy. Thick hoarfrost began frosting his eyebrows and hair. His legs lost all feeling entirely, and only sheer, unadulterated willpower kept him rooted to the spot. "Give me something good, damn it!" he screamed internally, just as he hit his absolute breaking point, ready to throw in the towel and sprint back to the fireplace. The float on the cloudy surface aggressively yanked downward. The tension was heavy, steady, and deliberate. A bite, a massive jolt of adrenaline surged through Suzy. He threw his entire weight into hauling the bamboo pole upward, and with a loud splash, out came a mysterious black burlap sack, when a tactical, army green waterproof bundle came hurtling out of the sky, slamming right into the frozen dirt. Suzy scrambled over with completely numb hands, tearing into the package. Without wasting a single second, "You have acquired premium smokeless anthracite coal. Quantity 50 kg. You have acquired military-grade polar sleeping bag X1. This premium anthracite coal burns for an absolute eternity, with insane heat output. Plus, it leaves zero smoke or toxic fumes behind, making it the ultimate fuel for tight, enclosed shelters. As for that military-grade polar sleeping bag, it's engineered with god-tier aerogel thermal insulation. It can lock in core body temperatures, even if the outside drops to a brutal minus 40 degrees. Super lightweight, pure comfort." Staring at these broken stats, Suzy's eyes instantly welled up, but the tears froze into literal shards of ice. The exact moment they left his eyes, survival supplies detected. 10x critical hit activated. System multiplier triggered. Congratulations to the host. You have acquired premium smokeless anthracite coal. Quantity 500 kg. Congratulations. You have acquired military-grade polar sleeping bag X10. Suddenly, a blinding flash of white light erupted, and a literal mountain of black coal, half a freaking ton, materialized right at Suzy's feet. Right next to it stood 10 thick, ultra-warm polar sleeping bags, stacked up perfectly. "Huh, the heavens aren't letting me die today." Suzy let out a wild, manic laugh, snatched up a massive chunk of anthracite, along with one sleeping bag, and bolted back into his stone and timber fortress, slamming the heavy wooden door shut behind him. He quickly stacked leftover stone bricks into a makeshift fire pit, right in the middle of the room, shattered the coal, tossed the chunks inside, and sparked it up using flint and wood shavings. Since this premium anthracite had a low ignition point, it wasn't long before roaring orange flames filled the pit. And damn, this coal absolutely lived up to the hype. Zero choking smoke, just pure, intense heat, radiating through the room. In barely 10 minutes, the temperature inside the fortress completely skyrocketed. The solid stone walls trapped the warmth, flawlessly, instantly transforming what used to be a freezing icebox into a cozy, springtime paradise. Suzy ripped off his tattered windbreaker, sitting bare-chested right next to the blazing fire pit. As the waves of heat washed over his skin, he almost let out a moan of pure, unadulterated bliss. Finally fully thawed out, he rolled the tactical polar sleeping bag out onto the floor and slid right in. The fabric felt ridiculously soft, its advanced thermal lining instantly locking in his body heat. Cocooned in that insane warmth, he completely forgot about the brutal, minus 20-degree wasteland raging just outside. A little cold snap? Is that all you've got? Snug inside his sleeping bag, Suzy watched the dancing flames of the fire pit with a smug, satisfied grin. Meanwhile, other players were out there literally burning their own clothes just to survive this hell. But our boy Suzy, he'd already secured infinite warmth for basically every single player in the zone. So while that first night of the brutal freeze was a total, hopeless nightmare for everyone else, for Suzy, it was the most legendary sleep of his entire life. He was completely cozy, sandwiched between a high-tech polar sleeping bag and a roaring coal fire pit. Early the next morning, Suzy finally crawled out of his nest and took a massive, lazy stretch. The fortress was still sitting at A perfectly toasty 68 degrees Fahrenheit. So comfortable, he almost didn't even want to get up. He cracked the door open just a tiny bit to check the weather, and holy crap, his entire floating island was completely buried under massive sheets of ice and snow, with violently howling winds tearing through the air. It looked like a straight-up post-apocalyptic wasteland out there. Thank God, he muttered. I harvested all the crops from the farm plot yesterday. Otherwise, they'd be frozen solid like rocks right now. Susie walked over to the corner of his base and smiled like a proud dad at the massive mountain of fresh veggies piled up high. See, because his farm plot was fully boosted by system-enriched soil and purified mineral water, the growth rate was absolutely broken. Every single cabbage and tomato had fully ripened right before the temperature completely tanked. He had hauled in over a dozen giant green cabbages that were literally the size of wash basins, along with tons of plump, juicy red tomatoes. After dragging his massive haul safely inside, he immediately replanted the new seeds into improvised indoor planters made out of old wooden crates, lining them up right next to the fire pit to keep them nice and warm. Susie washed off 2 tomatoes with clean water and bit straight into them like apples. Instantly, sweet, tangy juice exploded in his mouth, giving his body a much-needed hit of pure vitamins. Feeling full and completely refreshed, he got a bit bored and decided to open up the regional chat. But man, after just one single night of that brutal cold, the global survivor count had absolutely cratered, officially dropping below 3,000 people. The entire feed was flooded with heartbreaking final goodbyes and frantic, panic cries for help. But in the middle of all that depressing doom and gloom, one incredibly sketchy post caught Susie's eye. It was sent by a guy named Lu Chong, whose profile picture showed a totally shifty, untrustworthy-looking dude. Yo guys, we're saved. I just got insanely lucky and fished up a high-tier winter supply loot box. Lu Chong was absolutely spamming the chat channel, sounding completely hyper like he was delivering some grand savior speech. This loot box contains over a dozen heavy-duty army coats, plus 3 massive iron wood-burning stoves. If you guys pool together enough food and water for me, I'll hand out these winter supplies for free and carry us all through this crisis. The second he posted that, the dying survivors, desperately drowning in despair, instantly latched onto him like he was their absolute last lifeline. The entire chat room completely erupted into pure madness. Big bro Lu, Lord Lu, please, I beg you, just spare me 1 coat. I'm literally freezing to death here. I've got 2 loaves of black bread. Take them all, they're yours. I'll trade 3 bottles of filtered water for just 1 iron stove, brother Lu Chong. You are literally a living saint. Thank you so much. Yo, everyone send your gear to brother Lu, ASAP. Once we grab those coats and stoves, we actually survive. But watching these desperate survivors blindly trade away their life savings? Yeah, Susie wasn't buying it for a second. Think about it. A winter survival loot box? In a brutal hellscape like this, the system is just going to hand out over a dozen heavy military coats. And 3 massive iron stoves? No shot. And right as Susie is smelling a rat, ding, a private DM pops up. And who is it from? The man of the hour, Luo Chong himself. Yo, Lehin Susai. Huge fan, man. Look, I know you've got that cracked water purifier, and you're basically swimming in clean water. So here's the play. Hook me up with 10 liters of that pure water, and I'll personally lock in the absolute best iron stove. Plus 3 military coats from this box, just for you. Total steal, right? Susie literally scoffs out loud. This clown really thought he could play a master? But instead of immediately shutting him down, Susie decides to play along and baits the hook. Sounds tempting, but I'm going to need some proof first. How big is this loot box anyway? Is it heavy? Don't tell me you're hyping up an empty cardboard box, thinking he just scored the ultimate whale. Luo Chong replies instantly, completely taking the bait. Trust me, legend, it's the real deal. This thing is absolutely packed with premium loot. The weird thing is, it's actually kind of small, like microwave-sized and, honestly, light as a feather. I can literally lift it with one hand. Maxes out at maybe 10 pounds, tops. Susie straight up bursts out laughing. This absolute moron can't even keep his own lies straight. He instantly screenshots the entire chat, highlighting the dumbest parts. A microwave-sized box, weighing barely 10 pounds, supposedly holding over a dozen coats, and 3 massive, heavy-duty iron stoves. Then, he drops that screenshot right into the main district chat, with a savage caption for everyone to see. A 10-pound box, somehow holding 3 massive iron stoves, and over a dozen military winter coats. What? Are those stoves made of paper origami? Are the coats just painted on the inside? If your IQ is anywhere below room temperature, maybe stop broadcasting your stupidity. The exact moment Su Zai's tactical nuke of a message hits the chat, the global channel, which was just flooded with hyped-up survivors, throwing their gear at Luo Chong, goes completely, deathly silent. It takes a solid 10 seconds of pure shock for the freezing survivors to finally snap out of it. Holy crap, he's totally right. 3 actual iron stoves cannot weigh only 10 pounds. A microwave box could barely fit 3 coats, let alone 12. Luo Chong, you absolute clown. Give me back my rations. You dynamic piece of trash. Return my black bread right now. Screw you, Luo Chong. Scamming our literal life-saving food. During an apocalypse? Everyone, mass report this fraud. Ruined. With his lies brutally exposed in 4K. Luo Chong instantly becomes public enemy number 1. Getting absolutely roasted by thousands of furious players across the server. Utterly terrified, the scammer panics, shuts his DMs, and doesn't dare type another word. Meanwhile, chilling comfortably next to his roaring fire pit, Su Zai just kicks back, relaxing as he watches the scammer's entire life implode. As he casually tosses fresh cabbage leaves and thick cuts of premium spam into a boiling iron pot. Honestly, this apocalypse winter, total joke. Everyone's blowing it way out of proportion. He takes a massive, satisfied bite of the steaming food. By day 2 of this brutal frost, the outside winds are still howling like literal razor blades. The entire Cloud Sea has completely frozen over into a massive, desolate ice biome. But inside his cozy, insanely insulated stone and timber base, Suzy is just kicking back, munching on a juicy red tomato. In a sub-zero, -20-degree hellscape, fresh produce is a luxury meant for absolute gods. Finishing his snack, Suzy stands up and stretches out his stiff muscles. He looks around his base, his eyebrows furrowing slightly. Sure, this high-tier fortress is completely impenetrable and keeps out the freezing cold perfectly, but it already eats up 5 square meters of his original 20-square-meter floating island. Things are getting way too cramped. He needs serious room to operate. Yeah, this layout is way too tight to do anything useful. Suzy's eyes suddenly lock in as he boots up his virtual inventory interface. Sitting right there are 30 glowing blue foundation stones, just waiting to be activated. He'd stacked up on these by trading away water and weapons earlier, and raked in the rest of his profit by selling defense blueprints to desperate, dying survivors. At a stage in the game where most players haven't even sniffed a single one of these ultra-rare items, this man has a massive hoard of 30. Time for a massive base upgrade. Without wasting a single second, Suzuki opens the build menu and slams the island expansion option. System notification, 30 floating island foundation stones detected. Burn all of them. Max expansion now. Suzy commands internally. The exact microsecond the thought registers, those 30 stones erupt into brilliant, blinding pillars of blue light, slamming straight down into the bedrock beneath his feet. The entire floating sky island violently shakes as a deafening rumble echoes out. The earth at the island's edges begins to churn, stretching outward, like it has a mind of its own. His perimeter defensive spikes and trenches are forcefully pushed back by this insane, mysterious power. Dirt explodes, solid ice shatters, and the thunderous earthquake lasts for 3 entire minutes before finally dying down. Suzy takes a deep breath, throws open the fortress's heavy wooden door, and steps out into his new territory. His eyes instantly light up. It is absolutely massive. The island that was just a tiny 20 square meters has ballooned all the way up to 50. That's more than double his original land size. Now, 50 square meters might look like a small studio apartment back in the real world, but in a death world made of unstable, floating rocks dangling over a literal endless void, this setup is incredibly spacious. Perfect. Suzy laughs out loud. He immediately maps out a blueprint to rezone this massive new plot, leaving his 5 square meter stone and timber base right in the center was going to be his main base of operations, while a solid 10 square meter plot on the left was officially earmarked as his future mega farm, all perfectly tilled and loosened up. Right by the edge on the right, 5 square meters were designated as his prime fishing zone. And that massive empty space behind the fortress, that was his resource yard, stuffed with lumber, stone, and a massive half-ton of premium coal. The entire layout was flawlessly organized, enough to make any hardcore perfectionist absolutely drool. But despite sweating through all that brutal manual labor, Suzy didn't feel tired at all. He was completely pumped. Without missing a beat, he walked over to the fishing zone, ignoring the razor-sharp ice shards swirling through the air, and gripped his rugged, old bamboo fishing rod. Ice age or not, he was going to grind and fish until his hands literally gave out. Suzy baited the hook and gave it a massive cast, sending the line flying deep into the freezing cloud sea. The savage wind and snow whipped against his skin, and even with his tactical windbreaker zipped tight, he was shivering violently. Yet he stood there, frozen like a statue. His eyes were deadlocked on the bobber, a ruthless, predatory focus burning in his gaze. In this hellhole, slacking off meant an instant death sentence. Minutes slowly turned into hours, and for 3 grueling hours straight, his float just tossed helplessly in the raging gale, without getting a single bite. Just as Suzy's fingers were about to freeze solid, right when he was ready to call it quits and thaw out inside, the bamboo rod violently yanked downward. The pull was insanely heavy, like he'd hooked a solid block of iron. A monster catch. Suzy snapped into hyperfocus, dropped into a rock-solid horse stance, and yanked back on the rod with every ounce of his strength. The fishing line stretched completely taut, screaming with a dangerous, high-pitched hum. Gritting his teeth, his arm muscles bulged to their absolute limit, as his combat boots dug deep, scraping 2 tracks through the dirt. "Get up here," he roared, channeling all his explosive core power, and throwing his entire body weight backward. Splash! A deafening explosion of water echoed, as the frozen cloud sea split wide open, and a massive, black metal crate rocketed into the air, slamming onto the island with a heavy, satisfying metallic thud. Gasping wildly for breath, Suzy rubbed his aching wrists and rushed over to inspect it. The crate didn't have a lock, but it was caked in layers of ancient grime. Popping the latches open with his tactical dagger, he threw the lid open, and the moment he saw what was inside, Suzy completely froze before a wave of pure euphoria hit him. System notification. Traditional Chinese cast iron cookware set acquired. Includes 1 heavy-duty cast iron wok, 1 premium high-carbon steel chef's knife, 1 solid hardwood cutting board, and 1 Masterforge cast iron spatula. Boasts hyper-fast heat conductivity and god-tier durability. Let's go. Finally. No more boiling my damn soup in a trashy, rusted-out Spam can. Suzy was absolutely ecstatic. In a brutal apocalypse where survival is a daily nightmare, having a high-tier kitchen setup was an insane upgrade to his quality of life. But right as he reached down to grab the wok, a sudden chilling sound echoed in his head. Ding! System. Supply drop multiplied tenfold. Critical hit system activated. Congratulations, host. You have acquired a traditional Chinese cast iron cookware set. Teammates taint. Suddenly, a blinding flash of white light illuminated the ground. 10 massive black woks, 10 heavy steel cleavers, 10 cutting boards, and 10 spatulas materialized in perfect rows. Grinning like a straight-up villain, Suzy stared at what looked like a literal chef's training camp hall. He scooped up 1 giant wok and a full set of blades, turning back toward the comfort of his stone and timber fortress. Today he was going to whip up a massive, legendary feast to reward himself. The moment he stepped past the threshold, a wave of pure, radiating heat instantly melted away the freezing chill clinging to his skin. That premium, smokeless anthracite coal was absolutely blazing in the fire pit, flooding the entire room with a warm, cozy orange glow. He tossed off his windbreaker and scrubbed the massive cast iron wok until it was completely spotless. The thing was heavy, solid, and top-tier quality, absolutely perfect for slow cooking a rich meat stew. He quickly stacked fireproof stone bricks over the fire pit to build a makeshift stovetop, resting the heavy cast iron wok securely on top. Oh yeah, it was time to feast. He grabbed his stash of cabbage, tomatoes, and canned luncheon meat. Placing the solid wooden cutting board on the floor, he gripped the razor-sharp, precision-engineered steel cleaver. Thud, thud, thud. His knife skills were pretty clumsy, to say the least, but the blade was so sharp it sliced through everything like butter. In seconds, everything was aggressively hacked and chopped into thick, hearty chunks. Suzy fired up the iron wok. Even without a drop of cooking oil, he just dumped the diced luncheon meat straight into the pan. Sizzle, hit by the intense heat. Rich, savory grease immediately started oozing from the meat, crackling wildly across the bottom of the wok. An insanely delicious aroma filled the entire room. Suzy swallowed hard, mouth-watering, and tossed in the tomatoes to stir-fry. Sautéed in that hot, rendered fat, the tomatoes quickly collapsed, releasing their rich juices. and staining the bottom of the wok an appetizing, vibrant red. Next, he tossed in the chunks of cabbage and poured in nearly a whole bottle of purified water. Bubble, bubble. He slammed the wooden lid on top. It didn't take long before the aggressive sound of boiling broth started echoing from the cast iron wok. The rich, heavenly fragrance of tomato, cabbage, and stewed meat began seeping through the cracks of the fortress, a smell that felt completely out of place in this brutal, frozen wasteland. Suze lifted the lid, staring down at the churning red broth and tender meat chunks. His appetite was through the roof. He picked up his chopsticks, speared a piece of meat, and took a bite. But then his brow furrowed. The ingredients were top tier, sure, but there was absolutely no salt. For a true food lover, the flavor was just way too bland. Eating a meal with zero seasoning was straight up unbearable. Suze's eyes darted around, instantly landing on the 9 spare kitchen sets sitting outside. He pulled up the global trading market interface without hesitation. Time to trade these bad boys for some actual seasoning. Time to pull out the big guns. Suzy hoisted up the heavy, steaming wok, packed to the brim with glistening red stew. He lined up the ultimate money shot and snapped a high-res screenshot using the system's camera. The photo perfectly captured juicy meat cubes, vibrant green cabbage, and a thick crimson broth. Even the wispy curls of steam looked crystal clear. He listed the photo right next to 9 cast iron kitchen sets on the global trading market. Seller, Suzy. Item, 1 premium Chinese cast iron cookware set. Includes an iron wok, heavy cleaver, cutting board, and an iron spatula. Looking for salt, pepper, chili powder, basic seasonings, or rare plant seeds. Stock remaining. 9. Description. Craving a hot, home-cooked meal? Tired of breaking your teeth on rock-hard black bread? This top-tier cast-iron cookware can be yours. Right now, only accepting high-quality seasonings and rare seeds. Offer me worthless junk, and you get instantly blocked. P.S. Attached photo is my freshly simmered tomato luncheon meat stew. The second, this trade listing, and that mouth-watering screenshot went live. The regional global chat, which was just flooded with players crying about the bitter cold, instantly exploded into pure chaos. Holy hell, what am I even looking at? Braised meat in a real wok. I must be hallucinating from the hunger. This guy's insane. I'm shivering in a broken shack, gnawing on frozen bread. That's literally about to crack my teeth. And he posts this. Big boss Suzy, you are my absolute savior. Just let me sip a drop of that broth. I'll trade you every single piece of timber I own. Bro, this picture is totally photoshopped. There's no way fresh tomatoes exist in this freezing hellhole. I don't even care if it's fake. I'm drooling just looking at it. Trapped in this icy death trap, most survivors were barely clinging to life, unable to even boil a cup of hot water. So Suzy's picture of a steaming, gourmet stew completely shattered their mental sanity, leaving countless players utterly depressed and green with envy. Within seconds, his DMs were absolutely flooded. Desperate survivors started offering up salt, cumin, and even mutated chili seeds, just to get their hands on those cookware sets. Anything to help them survive the winter. Suzy just smirked as he watched the endless wave of notifications blow up his notification tab. He quickly filtered through the private messages, instantly banning anyone trying to lowball him with basic wood and stone, only keeping the offers with actual premium goods. In less than 10 minutes, everything was completely sold out. With a massive flurry of system light flashes, Suzy's inventory filled up. 2 large sacks of refined salt, a bottle of black pepper, a jar of chili powder, and 2 pouches of faintly glowing magical seeds. Deal complete. Suzy grabbed the salt and black pepper and dumped them straight into the pot. With one quick stir of his iron spatula, the already mouth-watering aroma reached a whole new level, into a literal culinary masterpiece. A dash of salt unlocked the ultimate umami flavor bomb, while a sharp kick of pepper sent his appetite into absolute overdrive. Ignoring the scorching heat, Susan aggressively inhaled the broth and meat. Damn, this hits entirely different. The tangy sweetness of the tomatoes, the crisp, clean crunch of the cabbage, and the savory goodness of the luncheon meat straight up exploded on his taste buds. Just one sip of that piping hot soup sent a wave of pure warmth through his entire body, instantly breaking a light sweat across his forehead. While the outside world was a frozen hellscape, Susui was chilling inside his indestructible stone fortress, cozying up by the fire and feasting on a massive wok of braised meat. Honestly, he was living way more luxuriously here than he ever did back in reality. But by day 3, the temperature outside absolutely cratered past -30. The endless sea of gray clouds completely froze over, and howling winds whipped up snowflakes sharp as razor blades, relentlessly battering every single inch of the Sky Island. Unsurprisingly, the regional survivor count took a massive nosedive, crashing hard below the 2,000 mark. Anyone caught without proper winter gear straight up froze to death in their sleep. And for the survivors barely hanging on, a brand new, terrifying crisis just dropped. Someone help. My wooden hut is literally splitting apart and the wind is blasting right inside. Mine. 2. That extreme freeze last night made the wooden planks warp and snap. And now there are massive gaps everywhere. Does anyone have dirt? I need mud ASAP. I need dirt too. I'll trade 10 timber for just 1 unit of dirt. Torn to shreds by the brutal temperature swings. These cheap, garbage-tier huts couldn't handle the extreme cold, cracking wide open left and right. Freezing Arctic winds howled through the breaches, which was an instant death sentence for anyone trapped inside. Dirt, which used to be a worthless filler material, only good for expanding islands or planting crops, instantly transformed into the most vital, life-saving resource on the market. And right when supply hit rock bottom, a few wildly arrogant players popped up. In the regional chat, leading the pack was Hong Dana, a massive, heavy-set dude puffing on a cigar. Listen up, losers. Quit your whining. Every single scrap of dirt on the market has been completely bought out by our Dirt Alliance. Hong Dana spammed the channel with pure arrogance. If you want to survive and patch up your walls, come talk to me. 10 dirt will cost you 1 black bread. Right on cue. The rest of the Dirt Alliance goons piled into the chat to hype up the scam. Brother Hong is being incredibly generous by sharing his dirt to save your pathetic lives. If you think the price is too high, then feel free to freeze to death in your drafty little shacks. Dirt is pure luxury now. The chat immediately erupted in absolute fury at their statement. Go to hell, Hong Dana, you literal bloodsucker. A single unit of dirt wasn't even worth a single piece of timber yesterday, and now you're demanding our food and water. Bro, you might as well just rob us blind. I literally haven't eaten in 3 days. Where am I supposed to find bread to trade for actual dirt? You're driving all of us straight to our graves. But Hong Dana just brushed off the toxic backlash, without a care, getting even more shameless. Keep crying. Every bit of dirt belongs to us. This was a straight-up predatory monopoly, milking desperate survivors completely dry for profit, though they were boiling with rage. Countless survivors stared at the widening cracks in their walls, and the freezing wind freezing them to the bone. To stay alive, they had to grit their teeth and trade away their absolute last. Precious rations for a few pitiful handfuls of mud. Meanwhile, Su Jie sat comfortably by his warm brazier, mocking the absolute clowns, clowning around in the global chat. A Dirt Alliance cornering the market? Do you guys seriously think you're some kind of capitalist mastermind? Su Jie casually opened his inventory and flexed his eyes over the massive mountain of dirt, stacked high in the corner. Between his previous island expansions, trench digging, and that insane 10x critical hit resource buff, he was sitting on over 10,000 units of dirt. He had way more than he could ever use for farming, and hoarding it was just wasting valuable storage space. Today, I'm going to teach you guys what a real market crash looks like. Without wasting a single second, Su Jie opened the trade window and dropped a massive 3,000 units of dirt all at once. Seller, suyez them basi dirt et deshant. Demanded timber X1, or thatch X1, or stone X1. Total stock, 300 batches. Note, anyone who needs mud to patch up their walls and survive, come get it right now at rock-bottom clearance prices. That laughable Dirt Alliance doesn't mean a thing to me. They're not even worth a second thought. 5 agonizing seconds after the listing went live, the entire chat channel went dead silent. Then, the survivors absolutely erupted into wild celebration. Holy crap, Big Boss Su Jie is stepping in. 1 timber for 10 units of dirt. This is literally free real estate. God, Su is an absolute legend. Long live Su Jie. Bro, I was just about to get scammed by Hong Dana. You literally saved my life. Hurry up and buy before it sells out. LMAO, Eondana. Weren't you flexing about monopolizing the dirt market? Keep hoarding it, loser. I'm grabbing my dirt from God Su instead. Those 3,000 units of dirt vanished into thin air. In less than a single minute, snatched up by a stampede of hype survivors. Su Jie's inventory instantly exploded with 3,000 basic materials, while everyone desperate for wall-patching mud successfully secured their life-saving supplies. Meanwhile, the so-called Dirt Alliance was left utterly brain-dead. They had just dumped a massive amount of their own resources to buy out every single private seller's dirt stockpile, just to control the market, hoarding an insane mountain of mud. But now, Sujie completely flooded the market at an absurdly low price, making their entire inventory completely worthless. It was so utterly useless, it couldn't even serve as toilet paper. They had lost absolutely everything they invested. Fuming with pure rage, Hong Dana Sensutsi Adivik Dim. That was brimming with unhinged, psychotic fury. Sujia, what the hell is actually wrong with you? We could have all made a massive profit together. You absolutely nuked the economy with this stunt. Do you have any idea how many resources I just lost? Take down that trade listing right now, or I will personally hunt you down. Susie literally laughed out loud, reading this absolute clown's rage-bait message. He took his sweet time typing back, "Hunt me down? Who do you think you are, bro? I just hated your little monopoly." And decided to completely crash your market. What are you going to do about it? Cry about it, loser. Go cuddle with your useless dirt and freeze to death this winter. He hit send and immediately blocked Hong Dana without a second thought. Clean, savage, and decisive. Instantly, the global chat flooded with roasts, clowning on the Dirt Alliance. Hong Dana and his entire squad became the absolute laughingstock of the whole server, left staring blankly at their piles of worthless dirt, completely ruined and too embarrassed to type another word. Susie closed the UI chat system and tossed another massive chunk of smokeless coal into the furnace. The brutal ice age lasted a full week before the storm finally started to clear. The howling, freezing winds died down, and the temperature slowly began to climb, though it was still freezing that deadly frost, capable of turning humans into instant ice sculptures, finally faded. The heavy snow covering his sky island began to melt, filtering freezing water through the soil and cascading into the endless sea of clouds way below. Susie pushed open the heavy door of his stone and timber base and took a deep breath of that long-overdue fresh air. But after this apocalyptic week, the regional survivor count had plummeted to just 1,895. Out of the initial 10,000 players who started, less than 20% actually made it. The true cruelty of this wasteland was on full display. But those who did survive had all built up basic bases and hoarded massive amounts of loot. The competition from here on out was going to be pure blood sport. Susie's gaze locked in, dead serious, as he walked out toward his fishing platform. Now that the deep freeze was finally over, he had to grind hard to restock his inventory. Most importantly, weapons. Right now, his only ranged option was a tactical crossbow. And while it had insane armor-piercing damage, its agonizingly slow reload speed was a massive vulnerability. If he ever got jumped by a massive swarm of fast-moving monsters, that abysmal fire rate would literally mean instant death. Susie prepped his high-tier bait and cast his line deep into the swirling sea of clouds. But as the minutes ticked by, Susie noticed something incredibly bizarre. The line on his bamboo rod just kept sinking deeper, way further than usual. 10 meters, 20 meters, 28 meters. The second the line reached exactly 30 meters, an invisible force suddenly jerked the line and halted it completely. It felt as if some sort of unseen cosmic barrier was stretched directly beneath the cloud ocean, locking his hook dead in its tracks, making it impossible to drop even a single centimeter lower. Suddenly, a cold, robotic system alert pinged inside his head. Warning, you are currently within the newbie protection period. The maximum fishing depth for your starter rod is capped at 30 meters. Bypassing this boundary is strictly forbidden. Server update notice. After surviving for 1 full month, your fishing rod automatically levels up, unlocking elite deep cloud sea fishing at exactly 100 meters, just as I calculated. A sharp gleam flashed across Susie's eyes. The intel from that message in a bottle was 100% legit. 30 meters was the absolute hard cap for new survivors. But this specific depth limit usually gatekeeps the absolute god-tier loot, hidden right at the 30-meter mark. Susie was just about to reel his line in a bit when the bobber let out a piercing screech and got violently dragged straight into the cloud sea. Holy crap. We got a massive bite. Every single muscle in Susie's body tightened instantly as he white-knuckled the rod with everything he had. Boom! A terrifying, monstrous force surged up violently from the 30-meter threshold, completely overpowering him. Turn text.